Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Welcome to the workshop, March 7th, 2022. We're going to jump right into it. We have an update today from the Auburn Housing Authority, Marty Sadowski. And Marty, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for inviting me. As many of you know, I'll give you just a little bit of background. The Housing Authority was established in 1966. We currently have 31 employees, and we own or manage 564 units. 177 of those are public housing units. Another 86 units are located within 3 tax credit properties. And we have 285 units that are in project-based buildings, Barker Mill, Roqueblock, Esplanade. And we're authorized to issue up to 590 vouchers per HUD. We typically have about 430 out on the street. Our project, one of our primary projects right now is the Streamlined Voluntary Conversion Program. It only pertains to the 177 public housing units. The conversion is basically a conversion of financial resources and funding. So essentially what HUD has done is they are asking housing authorities through either a RAD program or the Streamlined Voluntary Conversion Program to convert their funding streams from the historical, what was called the operating fund and the capital fund, into different types of streams. And for us, because we're a small housing authority, which is defined if you have 250 or less public housing units, the most efficient way for us to do that is through this conversion program. So we are working on that. The initial steps involved in that process was to reach out to our residents and to let them know what the process looks like and what's going to happen. And then later on, probably within the next 2 or 3 months, we'll submit an application to HUD for that. Other things that we're working on are development efforts with Glenn's office, centering around the 7-9 Fern Street property, and an as yet to be identified property for first-time home buyer subdivision, which I am looking at the Maine Housing Affordable Housing Homeownership Program, which offers subsidy. And we're very excited about what that could entail for the city. We're experiencing, I know this probably won't be new to anybody, we are experiencing a very difficult time with voucher holders finding rents, finding a place to live. So we have, our board had voted about a month ago or 2 months ago to increase our payment standard to 120% of FMR, of fair market rent, which is a number that's given to us by HUD. That helps essentially with the purchasing power of voucher. It gives a voucher holder more money to go out into the equation, into the market to find something. And also, we've reached out to the Lewiston Auburn Landlord Association, and we'll be meeting with them in late April so that they become more familiar with what the voucher program is like, and we can learn more about them and they can learn more about us. And also, another leg on that stool is we're finding that this concept now, the new buzzword is housing navigation. So if you give somebody a voucher, that's great, but do they really know what to do with it? Do they have the skills to make those phone calls, to know where to go to look online, and all of those sorts of things? And one of the areas where we feel that we can assist, we don't have the resources resident really to do that, but social workers do, case managers do. And that's part of what they do. So we're reaching out to social work organizations to see if we can help them understand what that process looks like and how they could use us to get information to help folks find rents. We currently have 480 applicants on our waiting list. And I will tell you that when I first came into public housing 12 or 14 years ago, most people could find rents in 30 to 45 days. Now we're looking at more like 90 to 120 days. So you can really see that it's become more challenging for them. Also to that end, we're participating in a Landlord Incentive program, which is a program sponsored through Maine Housing. So that helps with security deposit It helps with sort of an incentive, a $750 payment to a landlord who will accept a new voucher in his or her property. They can also come to us for repairs. So if there was a situation where somebody's on the way out and they want to have somebody come in and it's a voucher holder and they could use some money, there is a criteria set forth where they can make an application so that there can be money to help them with small capital needs in the apartment. And lastly, we're working with Glenn's office on the security deposit program that the city has, because we know that there's some regulations that they've been working through, and we're trying to be helpful in any way we can, because to the extent that the city can utilize it, it helps us as well. That's my formal report.
I'm going to open up to some questions.
Sure.
But before I do that, can you just define a couple of terms? So 120% of fair market rent, is there a dollar you can assign to that?
I can, I'll do that, yeah.
Yeah, I know it's a moving target.
Yeah,
And
so every year, HUD publishes fair market rents.
Right.
So a one-bedroom right now in Lewiston, Auburn, mean statistical area is $781. For a two-bedroom, it's $999. For a three-bedroom, it's $1,297.
I'm sorry, 1,297?
Yeah, okay?
Is that with heat and hot water?
Yes.
Or utilities?
Yeah,
Okay,
I
that's
think that would include utilities.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you're looking at 120% of the pay, if our payment standard could go up to 120% of FMR, that would mean that a voucher could support $937 of rent. Well, as of last week, the average rent in Auburn for a one-bedroom apartment is $1,432. So you still have a $500 gap that a family that qualifies for Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher, not making a lot of money, has to bridge still a $500 gap in order to get into an average rent. So
And that's a one-bedroom, that's not even a family.
and
that's an
that's a
individual.
one-bedroom, right.
Do you have the
right.
same numbers for two-bed?
Yeah, I do. For
Yeah.
a two-bedroom, you have a $268 is the difference between an average rent. $1,468 is the average rent. $1,200 is what the voucher would support. And then once you get into larger units, that delta increases. You go from an average rent of $2,200 to a payment standard of about $1,560. So you have gaps.
Thank you. That is actually great and up to date, you said.
Yeah, it is, because we look at this weekly.
Okay, great. And it makes conceptually sense too, or at least anecdotally it matches up. Are there any questions for Marty on this and what he's doing, anything going on?
Just a comment that HUD doesn't really fund the program the way it needs to be funded, and it's not agile enough on its feet to respond to these spikes in rental pricing. So, you know, when Marty says 400-something vouchers are being used, it's because the budget isn't there to support the vouchers.
The HUD
that
budget.
you may have a number of 590, but the budget does not support it. So we actually have fewer vouchers in Auburn, like
Yeah.
Lewiston and Portland and every other housing authority, than what the contractual obligation is from HUD. But HUD is relying on Congress to provide the funding, and they can't keep up with it. It's a difficult problem, you know. But it makes it hard for the city, because it even impacts welfare. If people can't get a voucher, right, they're waiting, and
Right.
they come into the city for a welfare voucher.
$2,200 in rent on a monthly basis for a three-bedroom. Equivalent on mortgage, that's equivalent of a $330,000, $350,000 home roughly, right? Variable on taxes, of course. So that's what we're looking at for an equivalent.
Yeah.
And then this goes back to what you're working on with staff here. And I know, just to reiterate, what council has set as goals is to increase the number of owner-occupied units, duplexes, triplexes, up to fourplex. Infill, existing infrastructure and so forth, how can we make those happen at a very quick rate? It would seem to me that, you know, as we get more and more apartments, and they're coming in the pipeline, they're going to be in that $1,468, $1,500 range for two bedrooms. That's what we're hearing right now. It would seem that in order to balance out this market, supply on owner-occupied would be a prominent thing, especially for the demographic that we're servicing. Are we wrong on that, or?
I mean, I don't think you're wrong on that. I think my concern about that has just been that if we move forward in an environment where we're requiring owner occupied and to have a rental situation, that I think that could turn away some people from the prospect of home ownership. But if we're creating housing, first-time homebuyer opportunities, and somebody has the choice to say, I have more economic means and I'd like to take on that rental piece, I think that's great. I just, when Glenn first characterized this concept to me, I might have misheard him and been a little bit confused over the fact that it was going to be every situation that you were doing that, because quite frankly, I couldn't imagine a single mother of two who might be able to afford a first-time homebuyer house, but does not want to be a landlord, that type of thing. So that was my only concern, but we have since, Glenn and I have moved sort of past that because we've had a chance to talk more in depth about what a potential subdivision looks like.
What were those rental numbers? What did they look like, the average rent in the marketplace 2 years ago, 3 years ago? It doesn't, I'm not gonna ask you to quote it, but were we?
Oh,
was it?
you've got to be looking at, on a one bedroom, if I'm saying an average is $1,432, it's got to be at least $400 less. It's got to be around $1,000 a month.
2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, pre-COVID. Yeah, absolutely.
Any other comments or questions for Marty? Councilor Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's not so much of a question, but it's more of a statement. A lot of the customers that come to you for assistance, either in rent or even to take up this homeowner occupant project,
Yeah.
a lot of them aren't making the income. I mean, like that single person you just mentioned, single mother with a couple kids. She's got daycare, she's got her own work, and the income isn't there to support the mortgage, the utilities, the property tax.
Okay, and I understand that, and I agree that that's a factual statement. But in the program that's being offered by Maine Housing, they're allowing families, individuals and family who are earning up to 120% of area median income. So when we say affordable, we have to think about affordable along a continuum, because if you have more middle-class people who are unable to afford housing, but if you do this and you can get them into housing, then that's going to begin to free up other housing sources. So this is a supply issue. It's just basic economics. If you have a greater supply, your costs are going to deflate. So,
If we could follow up with that one. I mean, again, supply issue, costs will deflate.
right.
Working, the 120% of, and I read the press release from Misha, 120% is what, $70,000 to $80,000 in
It
annual
is.
income?
It is. It
It's
is. You know what? I didn't
120%
bring
of
that
our
piece of.
city's median.
I have it
income.
right here. 120% of AMI for a single person is $59,808, and for a family of five, it's $92,275.
For a family of five?
Right. For a
So,
family of five.
husband, wife, 3 kids,
Right.
making $90,000 combined
Right.
gross.
Right. Now,
That's
given
100% or 120?
that's 120.
Okay.
So fundamentally, under those numbers, with subsidy coming in to reduce the cost, and with favorable interest rates, you ought to be able to find families who can do that comfortably. In fact, I've already got the spreadsheet that I'm working out. How much do they make? I'm projecting what's the amount of subsidy that's going to go into these homes, what's the projected cost to develop them, so I know how much. So, because those selling prices have to be less. I think for Auburn, it's $287,000. So you've got to be able to build them, put in some subsidy, essentially sell them for less than $287,000, and then those families have to be able to afford a
The carrying
mortgage in
cost.
that range.
And with the $50,000 per unit stipends from Misha, all of a sudden
Yes,
you're in the
right,
ballpark.
right. And maybe
At
some-
1,200
and
squares,
maybe
it's going to be
perhaps
240 on
other
construction.
funds.
And other funds.
Right.
So that leads me to the last question. You don't have to answer it now. We know, and for some of you new counselors, Marty's background with another housing authority, you did a lot of this single-family workforce development. People were
Yeah.
coming in, buying homes, getting out of generational poverty, everything that we've talked about, please provide us a list of what you need. Do you need blocks of land? Do you need, what can the council do, obviously through Glenn? What can we do to speed this along? Because if there's all these folks that need housing and don't have housing, I don't want to dare to guess where they're living today.
Right. Understood.
So, yeah,
I'll be in contact.
okay.
We talk regularly anyway.
I know. I'm sorry for that.
That's okay. That's all right.
Is there any last questions for Marty, AHA? We'd love to keep talking with you about this. This is obviously at the forefront of our policy initiatives.
Okay.
So thank you very much, Marty.
Okay,
We
thank you
appreciate
so
everything
much.
you're doing.
Thanks, Marty.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Next is presentation, Jill Cunningham, IT, Information Technology.
Thank
We
you,
do
Mayor
it.
and Council, for allowing me time to share about our IT team.
Jill, if I can, real quick, let me just, because this is the first time you're coming to the council as the IT director. So I just want to introduce our new IT director, those who are familiar with Paul Frazier, who has been with us for 28 years, has
Retired.
retired. And so we have, Jill has been working in IT for 4 years, and has been with the city for longer than that, but with IT for 4 years. And, so we're making some shifts within the IT staff, and so I'm really thrilled that, one, introduce Jill. Jill does all of our, everything that has to do with all of our software applications. That's really where her focus has been. And so being able to move her to that IT director position is really very beneficial for the city. We're able to lose, really we're not losing any institutional knowledge. Paul was able to bring her and Brian Susi up to a really good place for his transition into retirement. So it's been good. So, sorry, Jill, go ahead.
No, thank you. So, as Phil said, I'm the IT director, and the man behind the camera, Brian Susi, is our new network administrator. We have a couple of vacant positions that we will look to fill in the next few months. A staff technician to be backup for software, and a IT tech to roll out PCs and to help us cover some overlap when Brian's out. Our primary duties are software support and implementation, network infrastructure, security. We do the photocopiers and printers and all the access controls for all the buildings in Auburn. Our software duties are Microsoft 365. We do all our software upgrades, maintenance, and support with our 7 large software systems: Munis, EnerGov, Lucity, Patriot, cashiering, ExecuTime, and InTime, multiple payroll systems that we work with. And we also implement new software. There's always a need for change. We have to keep up with the times and look at new options. Our infrastructure duties, we handle the infrastructure citywide. We have 9 servers, around 129 PCs. We do the printers, scanners, telephones, like I said, all the access controls for all the buildings. Currently, we have 9 leased fiber segments and 8 local area networks. For security, we continue to do staff training. We monitor our systems daily. We continue to grow our multi-factor authentication usage throughout our staff to make sure everyone logging in is logging in securely. And we perform system penetration testing with our partner at Tyler Detect. Keep our system safe. We are a cloud-committed IT team. A few years ago, we began moving everything to the cloud based on where our servers were located, proximity to the river. So we virtualized our servers, we took our GIS online, our access controls are online now. And most softwares are hosted at offsites and duplicated so that we don't have any concerns. We have one last software, our Patriot one, that we'll work to move next. And that's it. We're pretty easy. Questions?
Mine works.
If not, you come see us.
Is there any questions for Jill on the department? I mean, it's one of those departments that nobody really, in case.
You shouldn't see us.
You should see you because everything's running.
Yeah.
So
If
when
we don't see
is
you,
when-
that's good.
That's a good thing.
That's a good
Yeah.
thing. Jill, thank you. Congratulations again
Thank
on
you.
your new role. So look forward to making sure we don't see you again.
Great.
Next, we have a recreation update with Jeremy and Donna.
So again, I think this will be the first time that they've come before you as well. So again, some staff changes here. Jeremy is our new rec director. Jeremy's been with us for many, many years, coming in to rec as a rec specialist, transferring over to Ingersoll when we first started moving in to a standalone unit within Ingersoll. Jeremy was our general manager that took over that Ingersoll effort. And then after a few years, Jeremy then merged into the rec superintendent, overseeing operations within rec. And now Sabrina Best has left and taken a position in another municipality. We'll name that. We'll just let her go up there. But we've got a great team. Sabrina did a great job again. As you'll continue to see, we've got a bench within our departments that are able to move into these positions, which is great for Auburn. And then also with Jeremy is Donna. Donna Daigle's been with us since a teenager as a camp counselor and has been with rec all the way through high school and to college and has been part of our team for a long time. A New Auburn resident and grew up in New Auburn, and so it's great to have Donna part of our team as well. So, Jeremy, go ahead.
Thank you guys for having us here tonight. We'll do a quick update on our recreation department, give you a breakdown on staffing, some of the facilities, and a quick overview on some of the programs we do. We joked today we could spend probably 20 minutes per slide talking about our programs and our facilities, so we'll narrow it down much smaller time frame here. So currently our department consists of 10 full-time staff. We have the director, deputy director, an executive assistant, 4 recreation specialists who handle everything from senior programming, adult programming, youth, an administrative assistant, and we also have 2 permanent part-time rec specialists. They handle the senior center, they do the trips, they do the busing, they handle everything that takes place in the senior center itself. As far as program staffing goes, we rely on anywhere from 12 to 15 part-time staff. That varies from season to season. Right now, our indoor season is by far our busiest, especially with it being indoors. You have the senior center used almost 7 days a week, Hasty that's used 7 days a week, and Ingersoll as well 7 days a week. As we transition to outdoor programming, that number will dwindle a little bit as a lot of our volunteers and coaches will handle the stuff that takes place at the various lacrosse football fields that we have. Volunteers, anywhere from 30 to 70 volunteers a year. Over the last 2 years with COVID, obviously our numbers shrunk quite a bit, but as we hopefully head toward a little bit of normalcy, you'll see many more people coming out to help. In a normal year, just youth basketball alone will have 30 volunteer coaches. Roughly 15 teams, roughly 2 coaches per. So just basketball alone can be 30 plus. That covers everything from helping a summer camp, youth basketball, lacrosse, even our special events where we rely a lot on the volunteers to help us, especially the spring celebration, the Fright Fest, holiday celebration, some of those big community events that we have. Something new this year that we haven't had in the past, we actually have 2 grant-funded positions. One is our Grab and Go coordinator. It's a CDBG funded program. For those of you who don't know, the Grab and Go was started due to the pandemic. We do have a slide later on that will go into a little bit more detail, but we have a full-time staff member that handles the ordering of the food, the packing of the food, the delivering, and he also does the cooking for the PAL kids every afternoon. So he's kind of a multi-use staff member. He's used in many different areas. And the newest one that's actually just getting rolled out in the last month is a mentorship program leader that is funded through the NRPA and the OJJDP grant. That is based off of the opioid crisis we have going on in the community. As I said, you'll see more information coming out probably the next week, couple months, and getting that rolling. That is a staff member who's been on board in a part-time position for several years. By getting this grant, we were able to bring her on for more hours and help support the kids at the PAL Center, which greatly need it. The last piece for program staffing is our paid coaches. We have roughly 8 coaches that get paid to coach for us. 7th and 8th grade lacrosse coach. We have a couple of track and field coordinators, and then the travel softball program, the Auburn Invaders. They have roughly 5 coaches that get paid. The Invaders is a little bit different than all of our other programs as it's a true travel program. We have tryouts, evaluations, they have to make the team. It's not your standard rec where even playing time, everybody gets to play. So that one, we have to have a little bit of an incentive, I guess you can say, to get the quality coaches for the travel program. But we have roughly 100 kids signed up for Invaders. I want to say there's 5-6 divisions total within that program. Facilities. So a couple pictures here. These are facilities that we directly oversee and we program out of. You have the Hasty Community Center, consists of the gymnasium, the recreation room, and the new classroom. That again was created due to the pandemic. Last year, Donna had to start a remote learning program on the fly, and we had, how many kids enrolled?
We had 80 at Hasty, 20 at the library, and 10 at Valerie Circle.
So that was a program that we had a couple weeks to pull together, and it was an absolute success. They were housed predominantly out of Hasty. We had to change our old storage room into a classroom, which if you walk in right now, you'd have no idea. It used to hold all the voting equipment for the city and all the old football gear as well. So that is now part of our stash of facilities for programming, which helps with birthday parties and with the before and after care program. You have the Ingersoll Turf facility, which is running full bore this time of year. We have field rentals, batting cage rentals. That is used from November through April. As we hit the summer months, everyone goes outside, so that kind of goes off the radar a little bit. At this time of year, it is used nonstop, 7 days a week. The newer facilities, the Auburn Senior Center, all of you saw it for the inauguration. That is being programmed out of 5 days a week. We have 3 different senior groups who utilize that facility right now and call it home. And that is, as we are, again, going back to a sense of normalcy, getting busier and busier, that's where our 2 permanent part-time rec specialists are based out of, is the Auburn Senior Center. And then new this fiscal year is the Auburn PAL Centers under the rec department's operating budget. This past September was the first time we opened our doors in about a year and a half. The pandemic caused us to shut them down. That's where the grab and go was based out of, which is currently still being based out of. But now we finally have the kids back. They're using the building every single day. We're getting to that point where the seasons are changing, and we're going to go from having 30 to 40 kids on a good day to 70 to 80 kids during this time of year. Sean has a running joke. He can tell when daylight savings hit because he goes from Friday having 30 kids to that following Monday having 80 kids, just like that. So we can tell right away when that time comes. Some other facilities that we program out of but don't necessarily run or operate. We have the Pettengill softball fields. Last year, the lower field, the baseball field, was converted into softball. And this winter, lights were installed on that field. So they're almost ready to be fired up, probably about a month or so. But you'll have 2 fields down in Pettengill that have lights. Adult softball and travel softball are a couple of our biggest programs. So converting that field from baseball to softball was definitely tough. But seeing the landscape of what adult softball brought and then going into the travel softball game for kids, needing another softball field with lights under our umbrella was greatly needed. There was no way we could continue to expand teams, divisions, any of that. Lakeview softball fields, they're still being used, not as much as they had in the past, especially with having another softball field with lights. Lakeview is now more of overflow, or if we get backed up on makeups using that field. It's definitely seen better days, so we try to avoid using that at all costs. But it's still there for programming when needed. Cleveland Field, it's a kind of a hidden gem in the City of Auburn. Not a lot of people know about Cleveland. We use that for lacrosse practice, football. A few years ago when we had T-ball, when Auburn Suburban was shut down, we utilized that field as well. The only downfall with that field is very, very limited parking. That's where we typically send like the older kids where the parents can drop them off, practice, they go home, they do errands, come back and pick them up. If we could ever find a way of increasing parking at Cleveland Field, then we could use it for many more programs. But right now, it's very, very limited. You can get 6 to 8 cars maybe if they park just right in that area. Chestnut Field, another one used for various practices for the different leagues. Sean uses that for the PAL kids. They're out there every single day. As I said, as the weather changes, you will see dozens and dozens of kids playing soccer, football, any activity they can on Chestnut Field. And then some of the other facilities, Union Street Park, the Gully. We have 3 basketball courts down there and now 2 mini futsal courts. That was opened, I want to say last October, right before the seasons changed. So you had some kids using that field, the courts, I should say. We also, credit to PW, they did their best, but they flooded one of the courts for a skating rink. Every time they did, the weather changed and it became unusable. But there is a plan every winter to make one of those courts a outdoor skating rink for the community, which will be great. And we don't have to go on Chestnut Field and flood that anymore. So municipal beach is still used. We utilize that for our senior barbecues, taking the seniors out there for lawn games, all kinds of different activities. And then you have the Auburn School Department facilities we use for everything from football, track and field, basketball practices, and same with St. Dom's and Tribal Field as well. This is a very, very brief list of some of the programs that we offer. We try to break it down for youth and enrichment, and then at seniors and adults. Again, we could spend 20, 30 minutes on this slide alone going over our various programs, but these are some of our bigger programs that we offer. We do offer youth basketball from 1st through 12th grade. We're the only community in the surrounding area that has a middle school and high school recreation basketball program. There's so many kids that try out for EL that don't make the team. This allows them a place to play and not be left out in the cold, basically. So, but this is just a very brief list of what we offer. We've definitely improved in our senior programming since the senior center opened up. The amount of hiking trips and trips Jamie and Jody are taking them on. Just last week, they took a group of seniors to Market Basket and Chick-fil-A in Westbrook. And to us, it kind of sounds silly and funny, but probably one of their most popular trips they've had yet. It was absolutely amazing, to the point where a lot of them are going to start traveling on their own to go down to Market Basket and Chick-fil-A. So something little like that has sparked a definite interest from a lot of our senior members. So here's a brief slide on our grab and go program. And these numbers have already increased from Thursday when I submitted the presentation. We are now up to 248 enrolled in the grab and go program. With everything going on in the world, the prices of everything from goods to fuel increasing, this number is going to increase even more. We have 3 Auburn housing units who are getting the service right now, and there are still others that could be inquiring or individuals that could inquire. This is a rough breakdown of what we have. Sean and Jim, they're the 2 staff members who run this borderline full-time. They do their best to provide everything from proteins to fruit to veggies, some goodies every once in a while when we can get them. But this is another program that started due to the pandemic. Sabrina and I joke this is only going to be for a couple weeks, and we're going to do this. Things will go back to normal, and 2 years later, almost to the day, we are still going. This program started as cooked meals, and out of our little but great senior center kitchen, we were cooking 400 to 500 meals a week. Everything from PB&J. Dawn and I joke now, she had 4 8-foot tables lined up, laying out bread, peanut butter, jelly, folding them, cutting them. We had a system going. That quickly converted to groceries, roughly July of 2020, and hasn't stopped. Like I said, it's going up by the day. And these numbers also include some of the PAL families that are enrolled who have always been getting food subsidy and support from the PAL. Obviously, those numbers have significantly gone up since the pandemic, and again, will never go away. The picture on the right is a picture of the new walk-in refrigerator we have at PAL that was installed last year. If we didn't have that walk-in fridge or freezer, this program would not be where it is right now. When we moved everything to PAL, we had 12 to 15 home refrigerators, freezers, Pepsi coolers, whatever we could get our hands on, plugged in every outlet we could find in that building. By getting the funding to put this together, it has helped us tremendously. Like I said, without the walk-in fridge and freezer, there's no way this program would be at the level that it is right now. So,
Now, some of those seniors, some of the couples and some of the singles, they're seniors.
majority of the singles are seniors. Yep, there are a few couples that are senior. The rest are family-based, but the singles, I'd say about 95% are senior.
And they very much appreciate what help you guys give them. They're very happy to get their groceries every week, and they're very appreciative of everything they find in the bag.
We try and hide some goodies in there every once in a while. We have some good community partners that provide their excess. Holy Donut, when they're around, they would give us their excess. We've had Dunkin' Donuts, Panera Bread. So we've been lucky. Things are definitely getting stretched very thin right now with the money we have. Thanks to Zach and Glenn, CDBG funds this. But as our numbers go up, our funding doesn't go up. So we're trying to stretch a dollar even further, and definitely getting to that point where we're looking for outside the box ideas to help continue to have supplies to give to everybody. There's nothing more disappointing when we hand a box and there's only 6 or 8 items in it compared to this time last year. They were overflowing. Some people were getting 2 boxes because everything we were getting from Good Shepherd was free at that point. So we were getting everything and anything they had in the building.
So have you talked to Glenn to possibly, if he can, increase your allotment,
We've definitely been working with Glenn and Zach to try and figure out.
and the city manager?
We will be, yes.
Thank you.
This slide is on another program that started due to the pandemic. Again, it started as a remote learning program. This year, with school going back full-time, we started a before and after school program. As you can see, we're only allowed 14 right now, and that's strictly because of limited bus capacity. We transport the kids every morning and every afternoon in one of our minibuses. We have staff that drive and chaperone, so we're only allowed to take 14 at this time. Down the road, we could have the ability to expand utilizing both or getting busing through the school department or any other means. We do have a waiting list right now, so the demand is there. We just don't have the means of transporting them for this school year, but it's something we're exploring for future school years. The rest is just a basic rundown. They come in the morning from 7 to 8, and then we pick them up at school around 3 o'clock, and they get back 3:30ish. And they stay till at least 5:30, up till 5:30, depending on when the parents pick them up. We have right now 2 part-time staff who run this program for us. They come in the morning, drop the kids off, then they head home or to their other jobs, and they come back in the afternoon. So we're utilizing 2 part-time staff for that program as well. And that's all we have for you guys today. So we could spend half an hour on each slide, no problem. So we had to try and compact this into
This is
Couple
just a
minutes.
budgetary overview, so you know what basically we're spending taxpayer dollars on. You guys did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. A couple of minutes for questions, or any questions or clarifying that we need?
A question on the divisions in softball and basketball. I was
Yes.
kind of astonished to see that many divisions. Just wondering how many teams.
So softball, we have anywhere from 55 to 60 softball teams a year, and that's co-ed, men's, women's.
He does casual and then he does competitive.
Right.
So the teams within that grows every year.
Yep. And new a couple of years ago, he started what's called a draft league, where people sign up individually and they're actually drafted on teams on their own. Actually, this past Friday, they had the draft party for the upper division, I guess you could call it. So the coaches sit around and they go up just like in NBA and MLB draft, walk up. The Boston Celtics select Mayor Levesque and come up and do all that. So it's not your standard just throw a bunch of friends together to play a team. It's actually expanded quite a bit over the years.
And for full disclosure, I did go last year to the draft day. It was really impressive, and no, I did not get chosen by anyone. That's why I was not invited to this year's.
You did get to throw the first pitch at the All-Star game, though.
Yeah, that didn't work out too well.
Hit the backside.
I did that either. So we're
And
gonna
I'm
pass.
sure due to, Jeremy reducing the amount of slides, he forgot the slide where I was part of the championship. This past year. I'm sure
I
it
had
just
to
didn't make
limit
the
it.
cut.
I had to limit
Cuts,
it.
Bill.
So you're
I
still
can
playing,
I can
Phil?
tell you
Counselor,
that
Counselor,
from,
okay.
I've just had kids that graduated from EL and the rec basketball, it's a massive hit. Those high school kids that get to play, they weren't quite, it's the football players that go and play and the baseball and the kids that aren't, it's a massive hit. They love it. All the other guys go and they watch and they really enjoy it. So.
On a good year, we've had up to 6 to 8 high school teams, and that's 10 to 12 kids per team. So the demand is there. There's so many kids who can't make the school. EL is such a large school that otherwise they're out on the streets or trying to figure something out. So
Counselor Walker?
Yeah, because I use that facility a lot, I just want you to know you did not have the new program, DH Friendly,
yes, you're correct.
which we use every month.
Yep.
And we have anywhere from 60 to 100 people that come in there as seniors and use it. plus other things that we do together.
Yep, everything from
They-
movies to meals to
At the
events.
very beginning, I noticed what you had for staff and everything, but you had no custodian in any of your delivery there.
Yep.
And I do know that you don't have a full-time, and I'm hoping this year that we can get to that point, because I can see where things are slipping already, because we don't have a full-time custodian in any of the three places down there, and that's too much to let go. So somehow, we've got to make that happen.
Yeah, currently we have a custodian that's paid under before and after care because he also drives the bus for us. So he's the bus driver custodian. But it would be nice to not have to use the childcare funds to pay for the custodian, although it's been a huge help.
If we could, I think with Phil, I know there's a lot of maintenance that's going on with Dennis and Public Works. Plus, we're implementing the new software package for maintenance and so forth with Dan's team. Could we just probably get a little update on that in the next couple months, right around budget season?
You're actually going to get it during budget.
During budget.
During our
season.
budget presentation.
Perfect. And I also know that's been a big conversation at the school department as well.
Are we also going to address the issue of the increasing needs and limited, I'm assuming that's going to come up in the budget?
So Jeremy really wanted to add a lot of other slides, and I did say just give them the department overview. But yes, you're going to see that. We do have some options that we want the council to consider, especially as we look at increasing youth participation. Even though you saw a lot there, there's still barriers to some of our school-aged children from being able to access rec programming. We want to eliminate those barriers. You're going to see that in the proposal that's coming forward, so that we're hoping that every child in Auburn has an opportunity to participate in one sport every season at rec at no cost. So that's one of the initiatives that you're going to see us present. Team's still working on that, but I believe that will be a big change for us in Auburn, but also a great impact for our youth.
I do believe we'd probably be the only city in Maine that has embraced a universal cultural sport, which is key. We're gonna be talking about that.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, I worked down at Pettengill Park for pretty near 40 years as a park superintendent, and I was, a team player the whole time with the recreation department as well, because without one and the other, we wouldn't have got half of what we got done either. But in the last 10 years, actually last 12 years, that recreation program has just grown so much that I don't know how they can keep everything running that they have going down there and still keep it within some type of a budget that this city can afford to do. And all of you for years have done a great job, so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and get it out there. Play ball.
Absolutely.
Have a great night. And now, a little human resource overview. Chris.
So I don't need to introduce Chris. Chris has been our HR director for some time, so no changes here. So
She doesn't know how to run a slideshow, apparently. Why can't I? Okay. Jill?
Presenter.
there you go.
All right.
This mouse is very touchy, by the way. Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. It's good to be here tonight. As the city manager alluded to, I've been in the HR department for many years, 22 years to be exact. I've been the director for the City of Auburn for going on 6 years now. 6 years, Phil. As well as being the director, I oversee the employee relations, labor employment law, and compliance, and also write policies for the city in conjunction with the city manager's office. I have 2 staff members. Recently, there was only one, but I was granted an additional staff member last year. Sherry Bach's been with the city for 14 years prior to coming to HR in 2017. She worked as the office manager over at the fire department. Her primary duties in HR are the salary and benefits administration, And she's our Munis guru. She's had years of training under Munis and helps to administer the payroll and the benefits through using Munis software. Excellent. And she also is the wellness coordinator for the City of Auburn, and does a great job with that. Has been the wellness coordinator for close to 10 years now. Chandra Elliott came to the city 4 years ago working in the police department. And as I said, last July, she came on to the Human Resource Department. Her primary job is recruitment and onboarding. She also oversees the workers' compensation. We are self-insured for workers' comp. So she files all the first report of injuries for all the city, as well as maintain all those records for us. And she also oversees keeping track of all the training, the AHR-related training, and filing the training records for those for employees as well, by putting them into Munis. And
Chris-
then,
Chris, if I could just add just to that position, I just, because we have new counselors on, that wasn't an added position. What we did was we transferred that position from PD over to HR and centralized those efforts regarding onboarding and workers' comp. Rather than each department having an admin assistant that was doing that, we eliminated those, but we created one position in HR by that transfer. So it's not a new position, but it's new to HR.
right.
So is it funded in part from the police budget, or is it just all from?
So that was reduced from the police budget, and really, all those departments that had admin assistants, those all collapsed into this budget here. So it's all under HR.
In addition, he is not a member of our department, so to speak, but safety also falls under human resources. So we work closely with Deputy Chief Fifield, who I'm sure all of you know by now. If you haven't, we'll cover that in a second. Oops, why am I not going anywhere? Our customers are almost all internal. Occasionally, we have somebody from the outside looking for an application. We have currently, we have 235 full-time employees right now. We have 4 permanent part-time employees, so those are the employees who have a set amount of hours, set schedule, and are permanently working for the city. Jeremy alluded to his 12 to 15 part-time employees on a regular basis, but that is made up of 113 part-time employees who assist with their program. So with their program, they may have 15 positions, but you may have 5 people who, I call them gym watchers, but they have another name for them, or maybe referees or what have you. So currently on payroll, at any given time, we have 113. Now, we may have some that, only work every other month or what have you. They come when they are home from college and what have you. So they also use part-time employees in the ice arena, as well as during election season. We have multiple part-time employees that work for us. These would be the ones who don't have a regular set schedule and don't receive benefits from us. We also have 29 seasonal employees. These would include some seasonal workers that we have through Public Works, who assist at the beginning of the summer with mowing lawns, raking leaves, things like that, as well as all our camp counselors running the summer camp programs. Some of the advances that we have made in the past couple of years with HR is we've improved our onboarding and hiring experience. Bringing Chandra on was a big help with that. We have utilized different hiring programs, as well as we've experimented using some of the Munis capabilities on that as well. We've expanded our Munis functions. We now do our timesheets. We used to do paper timesheets. Now timesheets are done through ESS, and we keep track of our vacation and accruals, before we would enter those in. Those are now all automated when employees do their requests for time off and then submit their timesheets. So that has saved us a lot of time. Maintaining our health insurance rates, we are in our own rating pool. About 40% of our health insurance rates is our own health history. Auburn has always had great rates in comparison to other municipalities, and we continue that today. This year, we had an increase of 1%, which is phenomenal. I think the average is about 7%, so we've done well with that. And then we've learned to do transition work and hybrid working with the pandemic. That has helped. We now know we have capabilities of working from home, working, in various locations. We just utilized this recently. We had a snow day, and rather than pay everybody to stay home, we all worked from home on that snow day. So those of us who have those jobs that do that. So this is something that, has been a plus for us that we've learned. Some of the biggest or the biggest challenge for HR right now is recruitment. We had 28 job postings, and some of those are multiple postings of the same job. Equipment operators, police officers are examples of that. And then as positions open in other municipalities, we find that we just train somebody and then somebody goes and works for another municipality after we've inputted that training. Of those 28 postings, we had 381 applicants. The majority of those applicants were for administrative positions. Administrative assistants, office managers, or executive assistants, positions within this building here. Very few applications came in for public works and for police because it's such a tough market out there right now, and it's very competitive, not only with the private sector, but within all municipalities. Of the applicants, we had 41 of them outside of the state of Maine. So we do try and do as much recruitment as we can outside of the state. But we're finding, again, that's primarily for police and fire to try and get people to move in. But we're finding, again, most of those came with administrative positions, which we have hired some people from out of the state. So that's always a good thing to bring in new people into the state. COVID-19 took up about 70% of our time last year. We were very fortunate prior to Deputy Chief Fifield coming on board as the safety director. Ray Lucier was here. Ray Lucier created the COOP plan for H1N1. Remember, some of you may remember H1N1, and had it all laid out. Everything was in place. We had our supplies in place. We had been rotating supplies that had expired. We had enough masks in the city for all citizens as well as employees to use and change out as much as possible, including N95 masks. So we were ready without even realizing that we needed to be ready. Which was great. So Deputy Chief Fifield was able to take that plan, revamp it for COVID. We were so set in place that we were able to help out several different municipalities with masks, including the city of Portland at one point. We were able to help out some medical facilities with some of our supplies. So it was, Matt did a tremendous job on that. With COVID came unemployment claims. The city of Auburn had roughly 24 unemployment claims that were approved. We pay our own unemployment claims. With the unemployment claims that were filed during COVID, the majority of those claims were not from full-time employees because we hadn't really laid off anybody. everybody was still working. These were our part-timers that were assisting at Rec. Rec had closed down most of their programming, and so their staff was able to collect that $600 from the federal government. That was not charged to the city of Auburn, but paid for by the federal government. So even though it seemed like a lot of claims, the charge was not on us. And unemployment fraud, we had 16 cases of unemployment fraud. Once people knew that everybody was filing for these unemployment claims, of course, the people who take advantage of things filed unemployment fraud. We investigate every single claim that comes into the HR office, and so we were able to mitigate that. I had 3 of them filed in my name alone, so so I wasn't, I wasn't exempt from that. But we were able, and as far as I know, we have not paid any claims, fraudulent claims. Policy creation and revision, we had 7 different policies that we would have to write. We would just be on the point of unveiling it, and either the federal government or the state government would change the rules. So we would rewrite policies as well as the city's own policies. COVID tracking, so Chandra worked directly with Deputy Chief Fifield to keep track of the COVID that took place in the city amongst employees. So we had close to, I look at my numbers here. Well, I gotta find my numbers. Sorry about that. 48 cases of work-related COVID that we had that was covered under workers' comp, and we had close to 100 of non-work-related COVID cases amongst employees. So that all took a lot of paperwork as well. And then Chandra would do the spreadsheets to be sent to the CDC for Deputy Chief Fifield. And lastly, all employees combined, we contributed to 2,712 years of service to the citizens of Auburn.
Chris, that's a lot, and big job. Thank you very much, and your staff, albeit as small as they are, for doing such a large job. Anybody have any direct questions about HR? No? Just some complaints that I think I need to file, but yeah, or get filed. Well, I have one question, actually, I'm sorry. Roughly, how many people did you offer jobs to and then they declined? And if so, what are the top, even anecdotal, kind of some of the top reasons they declined?
It's almost always salary. Or what I've been doing this year is actually asking if they're interviewing with somebody else to give me an idea. And people actually will answer, you know what I mean? They don't have to, but they do answer. So there are so many job openings out there that people are actually applying to different and then choosing which job they want. Sometimes it's location. So maybe the salary isn't as good, but, they can drive less or less distance. So, but almost always it's salary.
Very good, thank you very much. And next on our list, moving right along, is finance overview. We got Jill Eastman and Kelsey Earl present tonight.
I'm not good at this mouse thing. I'll let them do it.
Good to see you.
Jill needs no
Yeah, I'm the fossil. And you've seen me before. I usually have a Jill with me, so whether this or Cunningham. Okay, so we try to keep it brief. You see Jill every week. You get her reports, so it's just a general overview for us. But this is the financial services motto. This is what we operate on. We're committed to supporting the internal and external customers with timely and accurate information and the safekeeping of the city's assets. That's our goal. So the organizational structure of our department, we have our finance director, Jill Eastman. Deputy Director and Tax Collector is myself, Kelsey Earl. Our assessor is Karen Scammon. Deputy Assessor is Joe. Appraiser is Lindsay. And the accounting assistants are Gina and Jessica. And our tax clerks, whom many of you have seen over many years, I think 18 years is our longest. We have Tina, Cindy, and Nancy. So, programs and services of the finance department. So we split it into 3 different sections for you, as you could see in our organizational structure. We all work under that umbrella, but we are slightly separate in our duties. So we have the finance department. Our goals and duties are to advise the city manager and city council on fiscal policy. We prepare the financial reports, projections, and analysis. We work with the auditors, and we create and assist with completing the audit work papers for the annual audit. We develop, manage, and administer the budget. We administer the trust, retirement, and debt service funds, maintain the fixed assets list, and administer the insurance coverage. We continue with finance, where we post and reconcile all school financial transactions. We review and coordinate all the workers' compensation claims. We do payroll, accounts payable, and receivable. That includes the library, airport, and 911. We maintain the general ledger. We do bond administration for the city and the school. And overall, we support each department with any accounting-related issues. The tax department, that's the Tina, Cindy, and Nancy. They do collection of property tax as well as vehicle excise tax. We handle the lien and disposition process, any hunting, fishing, and dog licenses. We continually train our staff to keep up to date with any new laws and regulations for motor vehicle and inland fisheries and wildlife. We do the daily bank deposits for the city, as well as assist with the city clerk's office. And the assessing department does the analysis of title of all property. They do the valuation of all tax exempt. They help prepare the city tax commitment and valuation of all taxable and personal property. And they also process all of the abatement requests that then come over to the tax department. And because we're finance and we like numbers, we have a by the numbers slide for you. This is a general overview. That staff of 10 that we mentioned handles 9,416 parcels. We have the $91 million budget that we have to help operate and manage. That includes intergovernmental and school budget. Last year alone, we had over 34,000 customer transactions that staff of 3 handled. We also handle payroll for 310 on average employees per week. And that staff of 3 also handled over 15,100 motor vehicle transactions alone. And that's an average of 57.85 customers per day in person. And we also handle all of the online registrations for dogs, vehicles, things like that. Like I said, I like to keep it brief, but if you have any questions, feel free.
Any questions for Kelsey or Jill?
I would just say, Counselor, you're not going to find a department that is staffed the way they are to handle those transactions that you just saw. Any municipality that you would want to go and compare with, they're probably close to double the size of what our team does. And that's because we were fortunate. They have a lot of years within the city, and they run it efficiently. But they probably one of our most understaffed departments. And so we do try to find ways that the public can access them. We've really enhanced our online presence. We're going to continue building on that as we continue being more efficient with their time. We did make some changes this past year. Sometimes you can just say, use COVID, and then through COVID, we were able to say, all right, we've already been doing that, let's continue with it. But one of the changes that we did make was we did reduce the hours of operation within the tax office, where it's now open from 8:30 a.m. or p.m., which gives the staff 30 minutes on each end to one, prep for those customers coming in, and then also be able to finish up those transactions. A lot of times it's somebody coming in the door at 4, they're able to finish out. Prior to that, staff often stayed beyond there in time, just to wrap up those So that's been a good change for our team. But a lot of challenges within this department. They do a great job.
Thank you very much. And we'll have a financial report later on tonight. Or
Yeah,
monthly.
January. I finished February today, but you can't have it yet.
Take it easy on us, Jill. Okay, one at a time. We're going to move on to sports tourism. Norway Arena, and Mark Goslin.
Mark, just because we're ahead of schedule, you don't have more than 15 minutes.
What? This is
Have
perfect.
15 minutes.
This is perfect.
10.
10. I got cut?
Mark, I'm sorry, could you please introduce yourself and the fact that you're a professional hockey player as well? Help establish your
You want me to talk
bias.
about my professional, my stretch of opening a bench door for 2 games at the Maine
Hey,
Mariners?
listen, it's more than most of us.
That's true.
Congratulations.
No, it's true. Actually, a very cool experience. So, no, it's a pleasure, to speak with you, Mayor, Council, everyone in the room, talk about, I get the pleasure of working with a lot of different departments. Everyone from working with Jeremy, supporting Jeremy and Donna and what they're doing in recreation. A lot of what we do is, based upon access and growing access to sports and recreation within our community. And working closely with them, working closely with Glenn and the Economic Development Group, Eric and Planning and Permitting, a lot of the different things and suggestions and ideas and things that we want to move forward with, in this community in growing our, sports culture. And that's what we're doing here is building a culture of sport. When you build a culture of sport, people are used to, wanting to be here, not just wanting to be here to play, but wanting to possibly be here to live, to visit, to stay for a couple nights, and also to come back not just once, but to come back twice, 2, 3, 4 times. So just a quick update. Part of that piece and the biggest component of sports tourism for us is one of our biggest recreational facilities, which is the Norway Savings Bank Arena. I don't know if you've been up there lately. The parking lot has been jam-packed full, just because of the season that we've been having. We just held the Lions tournament. We just held Lewiston EL playoff game just this past weekend, and we've been doing a lot of fantastic things up there. But the one thing that I wanted to share with this group is the users that are using that facility now. When that building first opened, it was just more St. Dom's, Edward Little, Pulling Gray, New Gloucester, some adult programming, here, some private rentals, some camps and some clinics. Russo's clinic, would come in every summer and participate. Now, not only do we have St. Dom's, we have St. Dom's boys and girls, Edward Little boys, Edward Little Levitt girls. Also part of the St. Dom's is Winthrop. Winthrop is part of the St. Dom's girls program. We had Poland, Gray, New Gloucester, Oak Hill, they're called the Plog, okay, the Plog. Poland, Levitt, Oak Hill, Gray, New Gloucester hockey program. We have Central Maine Community College boys program. They are looking to add a women's program in 2024. We have the Twin City Thunder, a Tier 2, Tier 3 junior program that plays out of the facility now. We also have the second largest youth hockey program in the Maine Gladiators program. Our adult programming has grown tremendously. Not only used to be just kind of one skill level, now that skill level goes from those adults and young adults that want to learn how to play hockey in an organized way, and not so much of a competitive standpoint, that are playing kind of in a lower level league, to all the way up to a more competitive higher level league. And then we also have some co-ed leagues as well. That usage has grown tremendously. This past year, with some of the restrictions and challenges with ice rinks in the community, we had other high school programs that we couldn't support and help, just because we wanted to take care of our current customers and current users. Mount Ararat was looking for a home. We were able to help them with some ice time, but not as much as they were requesting. Brunswick High School was looking for a place to skate more permanently. We were able to help them with some ice time, not completely all their kind of request. Lewiston High School skated with us about 50% of the time this past year. We were able to accommodate their ice time, as well as just host their home playoff game here in Auburn. So the Coliseum didn't host the Lewiston High School playoff game. The Norway Savings Bank Arena in Auburn hosted the Lewiston High School their home playoff game. So we had Lewiston High School as well play with us. We also had some college programs, St. Joe's, who were looking for ice time. We were able to accommodate some, not all. So there's a lot of users that are, looking to use the facility. And it was nice to see the uptick, but it also created some challenges as well. We don't like saying no. We like saying yes. But at the same time, there's only so much time in a day. So traditional programming, one thing that we're really proud that really kind of kicked off this year, and I think we were smart in limiting the amount of public skates that we offer, but we are offering public skate on Sundays. Some of those public skates, we charge, $5 a head. We're making anywhere between $800 to $1,000 for that hour in public skate, which is covering multiple hours of ice time. We found a good niche and a good time for that time slot for public skating, and we're now getting anywhere between 200 people coming to public skate. We just hosted a new program this year with Skate with a Cop over at the Norway Savings Bank Arena that we thought we were only going to have 20 or 30 so people show up. Next thing you know, we had 50, 60 people show up with a lot of local law enforcement officers on their skates, skating with local residents and community members. We also have Kate, who's a part-time employee. We have 2 full-time employees that run the Norway Savings Bank Arena, 2. We're looking at hopefully hiring a 3rd, and we have a number of part-time employees, 3 part-time drivers that help us with the Zambonis. Kate Nato is one of our part-time employees. She just she's a figure skater. She is now teaching freestyle skating and has freestyle lessons, which has grown tremendously for us and has allowed us to reach a different demographic in the skating world, which is nice. And honestly, too, funny story about Kate. She's been also doing some stuff with some of the youth hockey players and some of the younger hockey players. And of course, she goes out and does things on her skates that is remarkable. She's a wonderful, wonderful skater. And some of the kids, oh, that's great, but you're doing it on figure skates. You're not doing it on hockey skates. So guess what she did? She went out and bought a pair of hockey skates. And then she showed them how to do it with hockey skates. So she relates really well to our demographic. She relates really well from everything from a 5-year-old or 4-year-old that's trying to skate to to those high level people looking for skating. Events. I just wanted to highlight 3 new events coming. We're going to host our first MMA competition, MMA fight, May 10th at the Norway Savings Bank Arena. It's mixed martial arts. Capacity will be about 1,200 people for the event. The reason why you see the UMaine logo up there, we're going to bring back the UMaine girls, not just for 1 game, but we're going to bring 2 home games to the Norway Savings Bank Arena next year. This is all, we think, we're 90% there. We're just waiting for NCAA to agree to it. 1 game is against Holy Cross. If you don't know the head coach of Holy Cross, her name is Katie LaChapelle. I played hockey with her at Lewiston High School. She was one of my teammates. She's from the area. Roger LaChapelle is her father. She coaches at Holy Cross, so we're looking to bring her back to town with her team. And then we're looking to bring Providence College here. Lauren DeBlois, Ray DeBlois, who's a partner with DeBlois Electric's one of our partners at the arena. Her daughter plays for Providence. So we're trying to bring a local flair back to the area with those teams and to celebrate girls hockey. And we're probably one of the strongest buildings as it relates to women's hockey. And we should be very, very proud of that fact. And then the Maine golf show, something that we're working to finalize some of the little details, but it will just mainly be a fitting. We're going to have 4 or 5 major manufacturers allowing people to come in and talk about golf and get fitted for golf clubs. So that's kind of what's going on with the arena. From a sports tourism standpoint, I think when we look at recreation and look at what Donna and Jeremy were talking about sports and recreation and all the fields, and the infrastructure that we have, and talking about access. When you look at sports tourism, that's what it is. It's about building and developing a new infrastructure for culture and sport. And that's, the ability to create economic growth with sports and how that impacts our community. How about creating a new product and new tourism destination? And then that's what the city did when they created Norway Savings Bank Arena, right? They created a new product, a new tourism destination for this area with the Two Sheet Ice Arena that is bringing people from Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, New York. All these individuals are coming to the area. And that's what sports tourism does. And allowing us to, work on infrastructure projects to help that will continue to help us provide a new product to what people are looking for in sports and recreation. But the other bullet there is to increase community support. And how do we build that culture of sports so that individuals in this community are very proud to host a sporting event here? And guys, it's not just hockey. It's trails. It's swimming. It's boating. It's using all of our natural resources. I mean, I think one thing that we can challenge ourselves a little bit more is how do we look at our natural resources in sports and recreation and build that and bring sports tourism here? How do we attract high-yield visitors, and how do we get them to come back, not just once? How do they know this is a sports destination city? And then marketing and bidding capacity. And I just I added that at the end because I don't know if a lot of you know, but we were a finalist to host the National Collegiate Roller Hockey Association National Championship here. We were one of 2 cities that was being looked at. Unfortunately, we lost to Kalamazoo, Michigan. Who wants to go to Kalamazoo? Seriously. But we lost to Kalamazoo, Michigan. That's the bad news. The great news about that was the only reason why we lost to Kalamazoo, Michigan was just because of the short time frame that they had to spin this year's championship. They needed to be more central in the United States because the majority of the teams that come from this are from out west. So what we're looking to do is this June, we're going to be hosting their board of directors for an event or one of their meetings here in Auburn, so that they can see Auburn, and then we're going to be putting in a strong bid for 2024. And when we talk about this is Division 1, Division 2, Division 3. This is 40 to 50 teams that are going to be coming to this area, staying in hotels. And when we submitted the bid, we had to block out about 160 rooms. And we have a lot of great hotel partners that worked with me on that. The Hilton Garden, the Hampton, even Cindy at Poland Spring was fantastic to block some rooms for me. But doing something like this also showed our deficit in hotel rooms and that's something that we might need to look at in considering how do we grow that. Something new that just came up about 3 weeks ago, we're going to be working with the Maine Sports Commission. I didn't even know that this even existed until I talked to the Maine Sports Commission. But the United States Broomball Association has a national championship. And apparently it's pretty big. No one thought curling was big, right? But we're going to be working with the Maine Sports Commission to host it's similar to the NCRA RHA bid, which is hotel rooms, getting individuals here to play a sport, and utilizing the Norway Savings Bank Arena for that. And that's why NSBA is a focal point. And we look at there's so many different other opportunities, and it really goes back to a lot of those that top bullet, which is how do we develop new infrastructure. And when we talk about new infrastructure, we did a feasibility study with Sports Facilities Management Group, and we came up with a lot of different objectives with that feasibility study. And 3 major ones was, how can Auburn be best in, how can we have the best in market asset that features diverse, multi-generational and flexible programming capabilities in a new product or service or facility? How do we make sure it serves a large part of our community, and how can we make it adaptive? What's nice is as we go through this feasibility study and we work with this group to talk about what we need and what this community wants, is the ability this is a blank slate for us to really kind of look at how do we look at adaptive sports? How do we look at any new sport that's coming in? How can we create how can we make something, whatever we build, whatever we invest in as a city in sports and recreation, how do we make it how to be a driver of economic impact for this city? But how about not just the city, but about the region and about the state? why, you know, we should look not just past Auburn, but when we bring something like a national championship here, we're affecting the state. When you have teams flying in at Portland International Airport, you're affecting Portland. You're affecting other parts of the state just because they're coming here to Auburn, right? Same thing as if they fly into Boston and fly, you know, and come here. And how do we leverage generating, you know, revenue generating opportunities? Everything from our corporate relationships and community relationships that we have with a lot of our great corporate partners, but it's also building a long-term sustainable model of how we make these facilities last for 30 to 50 years. You know, and Councilor Walker, you brought up a good point about not just how we build them, but taking care of them, putting plans in place to take care of these facilities. That's equally important. And then lastly, you know, part of my role and part of everyone's role here working for the city is community partners. When I think and we talk about the mission and the benefits around our community partnerships and sponsorships that we have with a lot of people who support us, you know, I kind of look at it from six things. One is the halo effect, which is people support because they want to support, because they're here in the city, they have a business in the city, and they want to be a part of the city, and they want to support what's going on in the city. That's kind of considered that halo effect. And honestly, there's some prestige to that for them as a business. Second, they're passionate. They're really passionate about Auburn. They're really passionate about their own business, and they want to be successful, and they see what we're doing as the right thing to do, and they love the aspect of everything that Jeremy and Donna are doing in recreation and what we're doing in economic development and how the city's moving forward. How can we provide irresistible experiences? And that's like the events that we had. New Year's Auburn, right? New Year's Auburn was something that was special for this state and was special for this area. And we got a lot of great legs and a lot of great press out of that. And it just really showcased Auburn in such a great way. And our partners noticed that. Those people who invest and support the cities, you know, City of Auburn, notice those types of things. And that's what they look for out of partnerships. Because when we look at our mission of partnerships, it's not just about, when I talk about, you know, a partnership with someone, it's about creating something for them, exploring different ways to how will this help you? Because if you're just writing a check, that's just a donation. That's not a partnership. A partnership is how we work with our community partners to make sure that they get what they need out of it. Even if it's just a sign in the arena, or if it's a sign at Pettengill, or if it's a sign in Ingersoll. We have to find a way that it's valuable to them in some way, shape, or form. Social proof and influence, interactive content. I just, today, right before I came here today, we have a new car. We don't have a car sponsor in the arena. We do now, as of today. They originally were looking at going to put them on the Zamboni because we have the Zamboni open. They didn't like my price tag on the Zamboni, so they went down another level. But they are going to come in at a pretty good level with us, so Row Ford will be one of our new car partners at the Norway Savings Bank Arena. So you're going to see some significant signage going up here in the next month. But when you look at interactive content, we talked about how they might be able to get trucks on property for certain events to kind of activate their sponsorship, and that's important for us because when it comes to renewal, I want it to be easy. I don't want it to be hard when we ask them to say, hey, can you support us again? And then the last thing is creating a strategic plan of how we're going to ask. And I'm working closely with economic development because this is not, we should have a plan, about how we're asking people to support the city. And who does what? How do we follow up with them? How do we make sure that they're happy with what they're investing in the city? So that's part of the process as well. So there we go.
We got about 2 minutes. A great presentation, Mark. Thank you. We do have to sometimes get up and walk together, so that's fine.
Okay. So.
No, Mark, you did a great job. Are there any questions for Mark on sports tourism?
No, if you had another sheet of ice, what would it do for you?
get about 300 parents off your back.
Well, here's the thing. I did a pro forma actually did 2 pro formas for a third sheet of ice, and we could fill that third sheet of ice.
Well, we look forward to the feasibility study, and
And by the way, that feasibility study, she's coming back March
Yeah.
21st.
special meeting day. Okay. Okay, March, normal.
March 21st, Susie's coming back.
Oh, that's right, 2 weeks. Great, Mark, thank you very much. And by the way, I saw it, the Lions tournament, oldest hockey tournament in America.
Yeah.
50th anniversary.
50th anniversary.
There were teams from all over Mass, Rhode Island. There was not a hotel room to be found between Oxford and Freetown. They were booked. Raleigh's was booked with people from everywhere.
Yeah.
So it was pretty amazing to see
Jean
the
Blake
tourism.
told me that. She was just like, oh my God.
Yeah,
We were so busy during Lions.
So, I mean, there's proof positive when you're in town, and our restaurants and businesses know when there's a tournament. They absolutely feel it. They know it. They can bank on it. So, great job. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, we're going to go take a 5-minute break and then go back in council for a meeting. like to call to order the workshop of March 7th, 2022. If you could please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I stand corrected, this is actually the city council meeting. Workshop was right before this. Sometimes they all run together. First on the agenda is our consent items. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Councilor Walker, second from Councilor, motion from Councilor Milk, second from Councilor Walker. All those in favor? Opposed? None being, passes 7-0. Next are the minutes of the February 22nd, 2022 regular city council meeting. Are there any corrections? None seen. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the February 22nd,
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion from Councilor Walker, second from Councilor Staples. All those in favor? Passes 7-0. And next we have communications, presentations, and recognitions. And I'd like to introduce everybody to James Scheller. Mr. Scheller, welcome to the City of Auburn. Here is our new manager for the Auburn Lewiston Airport. And I'd like to have him come in and introduce himself and tell us a little bit about himself. That'd be great.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is James Scheller. I'm originally from Hartford, Connecticut. Started my aviation career right there in Windsor Locks. And here I am back in Maine. Now I had aviation started in with the Marines, transferred over there. So I did 26 years in Marines and then got to commercial aviation, Sarasota Bradenton International Airport in the properties department, and then transferred over to the Houston Hobby Airport where I did landside operations. Graduated with a master's in aviation operations, a bachelor's science in aviation management, and a master's in business administration. So I dropped out of the sky, landed right here at the Lewiston Auburn Airport, and immediately got started with the budget. Had a lot of fun meeting everybody, met a lot of the pilots and a lot of the tenants and stakeholders at the airport. A lot of great ideas. I can see that the airport's been sitting kind of stagnant for a little bit, and with fresh ideas, my background is to bring some business to the airport, bring more aircraft stationed here at the airport, and therefore make this airport more of the commuter destination airport, and kind of bring the larger aircraft here. So your next flight out of this state may be somewhere starting right here in Auburn Lewiston Airport.
Your next flight is closer than you think, right?
That's right.
I think that I've seen that on our website somewhere. We haven't had a flight, but I think we could probably add that. That's awesome. Is there anything how long have you been on board now, Mr.
Since January 17th.
Okay, so you're fairly new.
Yeah,
Well, we'd love to invite you back. We'll see you definitely during the budget season as you get your mind and your arms wrapped around the Auburn Lewiston Airport. And we'd love to see what we can use to maximize this asset, because we know it's a great asset.
It is, yes, sir.
Great. Thank you very much, and welcome to Maine, too. Did you find a place to live?
We did. It was quite a challenge to find a place. But we got right downtown Lewiston.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll get you across the river soon. Thank you. Okay, next up, there's some communication, and first, it's in your packet. I'm not going to read it to you. It's from the Auburn Ski Association. I'm going to talk about our outdoor recreational nonprofits during my portion of communication in a second, but I urge you all to read this in order to get an idea of some of the financial hardships that a lot of our nonprofits, especially those that require fundraising, the challenges that they face during the last 2 years with COVID-19. Then, segueing into council communications, let me start off here if I could. First, I'd like to announce that I have spoken to the city manager. I'd like to announce to you all that we'll be drafting up a new ARPA fund, and that will consist of $50,000 of ARPA money specifically earmarked for nonprofits that conduct outdoor recreation within the city of Auburn. For example, the Auburn Ski Association. We have still yet to draft some parameters of that. I'd like to draft some parameters of that and make that available for your comment and ultimate appropriation of funds at our next city council meeting, March 17th. But ideally, or conceptually, I should say, this should allow everybody from Auburn Ski Association, to Friends of Mount Appetite, to the Auburn Nordic Ski Association, the ability to apply for COVID funds in order to enhance their offerings for outdoor safe activities, specifically for our youth. The more and more I talk to people, the more programs are there for our youth, the more potential there is for our youth and things that have yet to be developed. So we'd like to maximize those opportunities. So again, look for that on our next meeting, March 22nd. Next up, communication. School budget. We'll skip that to reports. I also will be reforming a mayor's ad hoc committee as we get around a little less than half of our ARPA money already encumbered. We need to be looking at the second tranche, which comes in May. I'm going to reform, slightly different probably, mayor's ad hoc committee, start reviewing a lot of the projects brought forth by nonprofits, brought forth by municipal government, as well as this council, in order to make sure that we have a screening process, a scale in which we can grade and judge these before we bring them up to the council for final determination, as always. Okay. That's that, and the rest are for reports. Any other communications from the council on non-committee work? Start over here, Dennis Staples, Councilor. Any other communications, notices? Mr. Manager? All set. All set? Okay. Next, we have the first open session of the night. Members of the public are invited to speak to the council about any issue directly related to city business, which is not on tonight's agenda. We'd ask you to come up to the podium, state your name, your address, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Anybody for the first open session? And again, if you're here to speak on a specific item that is on the agenda, we'll also have an open session for that as well. We'll be moving on to unfinished business. First on the agenda is ordinance 07-02222022, adopting a moratorium on development proposals involving public safety facilities, detention facilities, or correctional facilities at a site on which one currently does not exist. This is the second and final reading. Do I have a motion?
Motion to accept?
Motion from Councilor Walker. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilor Hawes. I'll open this up to the public for comment. Is there anybody in the public that would like to comment on this moratorium? Okay. Bring this back to the council. We'll open up the council for debate. Anybody like to speak in support of this moratorium?
Point of information, please.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. From last time this came in front of us to now, it seems like it's gotten longer. And I was paying attention, and we didn't amend it, so how did it get more language added to it?
Nothing's changed, Council.
It seems like it went from like a couple pages to over 4, or about 4.
Everything stayed the same.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody want to speak in opposition of this moratorium? Again, this moratorium is for a period of 180 days. It is renewable once. None being asked for a vote. Roll call vote at this time, and all roll call votes start with Councilor Staples.
Counselor Staples.
No.
Counselor Gary.
No.
Counselor Whiting.
Yes.
Counselor Hawes.
Yes.
Counselor Milks.
Yes.
Counselor Moran.
Yes.
Counselor Walker.
Yes.
Moratorium passes by a vote of 5-2. Moving on to new business. First, Order 33-0307-2022, authorizing the fee waiver for the police department detail coverage for the trek across Maine. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
A motion from Councilor Gary, second from Councilor Walker. Anybody in the public like to speak on this? Basically, for everybody's knowledge, this is a waiving of our public safety fees for traffic control, so forth, approximately $1,000. Bring it back to the council. Council, comment?
It's a worthwhile event.
It's a worthwhile event, and we have set precedents for nonprofits waiving of these fees. Though I do have one question that I don't think will be appropriate now, but I'd like to check on to see if ARPA funds can be allocated to supporting logistics on outdoor events in the future. Might be something to check into if we have a pool of money that can offset our security, our police, traffic, and so forth. At this point, I'll ask for a vote. Show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? None being. Passes 7-0. Next is Order 34-0307-2022, authorizing loans of up to $1,298,000 $1,488 to the State School Revolving Renovation Fund. This is a first reading. It's a public hearing. It will be held on March 21st council meeting. Passage required affirmative vote of 5 councilors at the second reading. Do I have a motion?
Motion to accept.
Second.
Second for Councilor, motion for Councilor Walker, second for Councilor Whiting. Open this up to the public for comment. Anybody from the public like to comment? Bring it back to the floor. Mr. Manager, you want to explain this? We're good? Councilors, are we all good on this? Okay.
Mayor, if I would.
Yes.
Just for the public to know that there's a large portion of this is covered as a reimbursement. So this is just a wise investment for us to participate in. This does need to come before the council and not the school committee for final approval.
Very good. At this point, I'm going to ask for a roll call vote.
Counselor Staples?
Yes.
Counselor Gary?
Yes.
Counselor Whiting?
Yes.
Counselor Hawes?
Yes.
Counselor Milks?
Yes?
Counselor Moran?
Yes.
And Counselor Walker?
Yes.
Passes by a vote of 7-0. Next, we have Order 35-03072022, amending the TIF number 20. I'm sorry, approving. I apologize. Approving the TIF number 26 North River Road Apartments Municipal Development Tax Increment Finance Development Program. It's a public hearing and a vote. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion for Councilor Walker, second for Councilor Milks. Open this up to the public for comment. This is a public hearing. Anybody in the public that would like to comment on this? None being, I'm going to bring this back to the council. Council, remember this is a TIF and not a credit enhancement agreement. So all taxes collected will be sheltered and then spent for municipal projects. Okay. Any other questions, debate?
Yeah, just for the public, well, this account will accumulate taxes that are generated by this property. What's the process for spending those? Does that come to the council, or is that just through Mr. Holmes' department?
Well, first, it is in your packet, so the appropriations based upon state statutes is there on where it's going to be spent, but I'll turn it over to Mr. Holmes here, and he can give a little bit more detail on that.
These funds would be applied into projects that would be coming through the budget process and approved by council. It does include all of the North River Road and all associated roads that connect to North River Road, as well as public safety building and economic development purposes.
Any other questions? Councilor Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When you talk about other economic projects, can funds also be used for agricultural, not just, well, agricultural business projects as well as your general business projects?
Anything to do with economic development, so agricultural businesses would fall under economic development.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Debate? Pros, cons? None being? Okay, I'm going to ask for a vote by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? None being, passes 7-0. Next is ordinance 08-03072022, amending the zoning map and adjusting Article 12, Division 4, Section 60-951, Lake Auburn Watershed Overlay District map. This is a public hearing and first out of 2 readings. Do I have a motion? Motion?
I'll make a motion.
Who's that? Sorry. Oh, Councilor Moran. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second, Councilor Haas. Very good. Open this up to the public. Anybody from the public like to speak on this? Please. You don't have to raise your hand. Okay? That would be kind of cool. Maybe something different. Just please get in line or in queue, right behind the podium. Again, same rules apply. Name, address, 3 minutes.
My name is Ben Lounsbury, 505 West Auburn Road in Auburn. And I'd like to speak for my wife. She prepared these notes. She'd like to say that something should be done with the gravel pit site. She don't advocate leaving it as is. The question is, what is the best reuse that protects Lake Auburn? Maybe this is a good site for a solar farm to supply the city's electrical needs. There may be other innovative uses. This is not the first gravel pit to be reclaimed. Perhaps there is a use that could be a model for other cities. I'd like to make 2 comments on water quality. First, since the most recent of the studies is still 15 years old and there has been extraction since then, it would be useful to measure the water in the monitoring wells to develop an updated water flow map. Second, if there are any impermeable surfaces with development, there could easily be runoff to Lake Auburn. Retention ponds are a common way to control runoff, but retention ponds are themselves recharge areas for groundwater. In effect, then, whatever polluted water flowed into the ponds could potentially affect the local groundwater flow. We cannot afford to take chances with our water supply.
Excuse me, sir. I'm sorry, can you, just so we have it on record, the recent studies you're stating were 15 years old. We have one that's 2 years old. Is there a different study?
She must have been unaware of the one that's 2 years old. I'm sorry.
Okay, great. No, thank you. I just want some clarification.
Good evening. My name is Joan Wenzel. My address is 767 West Auburn Road. First and foremost, I want to thank the councilors, Mr. Mayor, for the continued efforts that you provide to us. I'm going to talk about, this is going to be less than a minute. We all know that Lake Auburn is a crucial source of drinking water for the Twin Cities. We need to know that the City of Auburn is putting forth a strong lake protection effort on all fronts, not just updating the septic systems. Has the Lake Auburn Watershed Commission, the Auburn Water District, and the Lewiston Water District been consulted about the proposed rezoning? I think that their thoughts on this are very important, and they deserve a voice in this matter. The famous study, the $100,000 study that we know about, that was just done last year, 2021, the Regulatory Environmental Economic Analysis of Lake Auburn, reported to be not in favor of expanding development in the watershed. And also it clearly states increased density and new opportunities for residential development are better suited for other areas in Auburn outside the Lake Auburn watershed. My question is, why is there a push to rezone this area? It's clearly not for the greater good of the Twin Cities. Who exactly would benefit from this? There hasn't been a current geological study that I know of that has been done in recent years. So maybe that's what we're talking about, a hydrogeological study. But I'd recommend that we have one because of the rezoning and the watershed issue at this point. We have an incredible natural resource that has been successfully serving both Lewiston and Auburn. Yes, it needs monitoring, and it has been done in a cost-effective way. Not protecting our lake could easily result in building a multi-million-dollar water filtration plant with yearly costs of up to $1 million. Are the desires of the developers more important than protecting the water supply for the citizens of Auburn and Lewiston? That's all I have to say.
I just want to clarify one thing that you said. This ordinance does not, this land has not been in the watershed. What we're doing is we're just making the map conform with reality based upon 60 or 70 years, our dumps there, the gravel pits there. That's what the study showed. So this has not been in our watershed, so we're just conforming it to what the reality is, okay?
Thank you for that, but I do think that the shifting in the grounds and the gravel pit and the mining may have effects on
Do you
the water.
have any data to support that claim?
That's what I'm asking for.
So you have so that's a suspicion on your end? You suspect that might be happening?
No, listening to the community comments and listening to David Roque, who came to the community. There are questions about it, and I think that we should have the most current data on it, especially in view of the fact that the regulatory publication that came out is very much against this. So I need to be convinced more that this is a safe thing to do.
Very good, thank you.
Excuse me, my name is Stephen Beal, 575 Johnson Road in Auburn. Own an extended tract of land along Townsend Brook, one of the principal sources of Lake Auburn. This matter has been the subject of a lot of discussion. It was before the planning board in late December or early January, and at that time there were a couple of maps generated showing the affected area, a hydrology map and a land ownership parcel map. Both the maps have this red ellipse on them, which is the area which is identified on this recent memorandum that the planning department generated within the last couple of days. I believe this report most recently was generated on Friday of last week. I hope all the councilors have read it. In the report, underneath these two plans, it states, the dotted red circle is provided for ease of reference between the two maps. Originally, the dotted red circle was provided because it shows the area under which there is a very large area of underground ledge. And the concern is regarding water flow coming off that ledge. There are vector lines on this map showing water flowing in all directions off the ledge. I asked the planning department at that meeting if they would show the proposed new watershed boundary line on this hydrology map. I had drawn it out in my own head, and I met with Mr. Blay of the planning department today. He provided me with a copy of this updated map, which shows the watershed line going just about where I thought it would, right through the middle of this ledge area. Some of the water flows off in all directions. Some of the water flows toward Grace Lawn Road, some goes directly to the lake. That is still in the watershed, but there is some off to either side of this elliptical area that just goes down off the ledge, excuse me, and doesn't indicate on the maps where the water ends up. I think we need more study and examination to determine what that water flow is like and where it goes. When I spoke to Mr. Blay about this, he said that the department was extremely concerned about watershed quality protection and that the department was recommending that there be site point treatment centers on every possible area where water flow might be flowing toward the lake. He stated that there were as many as 12 separate sites that needed to have water controls placed on them in this area. Perhaps he does not identify those in particularity as to where they are. I don't think they've been positioned at present, but that was the statement, that we need to have those absolute controls in place. I think that a simple administrative way would be to remove, excuse me, this proposed move northward of the watershed line to the line that's depicted on these maps, and to place it, for example, 200 feet north of Grace Lawn Road. That would provide an adequate room for development. I make no comment about the quality of the development or the aesthetics or whatever, strictly environmental concerns. Another way would be to move the watershed line to no further north than the southerly edge of this red elliptical area. That's somewhat closer.
Sir, we're just over 3 minutes,
Yes.
but I would definitely appreciate your comments. If you could put those in an email, get them out to staff, they can forward them out to us, so we can look at them over the course of the next 2 weeks. That'd be wonderful.
I've given them to Mr. Blay, but I'll put them in an email.
I can request them for Mr. Bly. That's fine.
Shall I give them to Mr. Cousins? Or
Yeah, sure, yeah.
To John? Okay, thank you.
We'll make
Thank
sure we
you,
got
Mr.
it. Thank you very much, Mr. Bill.
My name is Marianne Nacros. I live at 47 Woodlawn Avenue in Auburn. I'm an 80-year-old lifelong resident of the city. Back in the 1950s, I had a classmate who lived at the foot of Goff Hill in the Auburn Water District house. The first floor was the district office. The second floor was her home because her father was head of the Auburn Water District. So from the mid-50s on, I have been concerned with what happens with water and Lake Auburn. I've written letters to the editor. I even wrote you each a letter explaining the paperwork that I received at a meeting I went to recently, which was for people who had septic systems in the watershed. And that's already been referenced by someone else, but it says that development should not be considered in the watershed. I know you say this is not in the watershed, but it's ding-dang close to it. And I just want you to be concerned and think twice about what you're doing, because that water system, that Lake Auburn, is our water system here in Auburn and Lewiston. And I know you're giving it thought, but when I go to the planning board meeting and they vote unanimously to bring this to your attention, I really begin to be concerned as to where this particular thing is headed. Where are we headed from here? Not in the watershed yet, but is it going to eventually have problems that are going to affect Lake Auburn? That's my concern. Thank you.
My name is Fred Holler. I live at 352 West Auburn Road. I do have the 2-year study in front of me, and I would like to just capsulize that briefly. This study says be very careful with the city, with the Lake Auburn water supply. It says it's very near a tipping point. It says it's very fragile, and it recommends not doing any construction near the watershed or near the lake. We are responsible for the water supply. I don't know where Lewiston is on this issue, but I don't think we want to zone an area that is to be zoned for industrial and commercial use that close to our very fragile water supply. So I would urge you to vote against rezoning this area. You can't talk about the water supply without talking about zoning. And I'm very concerned that we may lose control of our own zoning. There are 2 bills in the legislature up in Augusta right now. One, Mr. Bickford's about taking away the 10% requirement to earn your living from farming if you're going to build a house on a farm. I think we could solve the farmers' problems without Augusta's input. There is another bill that would really take zoning away from us, and that is Ryan Fectew's bill, which would essentially take the privilege of zoning your own city from you and put it in Augusta. It's a very comprehensive bill, and it's well worth reading. I think Auburn ought to express themselves at the hearing, which I think the mayor is going to, that this is not something that we want. We don't want to put our zoning in the hands of Augusta. We can do it ourselves. Thank you very much. The other thing I want to say about Lake Auburn, we teach our kids to take care of the planet. If anything happens to that lake and we can't use it for our water supply, how are we going to explain that to our kids? Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Carrie Myrick, and I live at 1010 Summer Street in Auburn. I am kind of in between the agricultural zone and the watershed. So after reading the whole study for the water, Lake Auburn, there were 2 statements that are here. One of the future scenarios, none of these future scenarios meet acceptable water quality goal that maintains high quality water for drinking water, recreational use, or aquatic health for Lake Auburn. And then another one was bulleted was, we found no environmental, economical, or social benefits supporting expansion of development of the Lake Auburn watershed for the rezoning. So what I'd like to see is the lake study consultants come back and have an open hearing so that people can ask questions of the people who did the lake study. So we can ask some of the questions, because when we read some stuff that's coming out through here, it's kind of bits and pieces are being pulled from this report. And so I'd like to have the opportunity to speak with the consultants who did the study and ask about some of their questions about not developing around or not changing the water, the water protection zone, and how everybody's coming to their decisions. So that's what I'd like to see happen.
Thank you.
My name is Peggy Volek, and I live on 395 North Auburn Road. The argument that I've heard is, well, this isn't in the watershed. We're going to change the watershed. That's quite a statement. How do you change a watershed? I think you need to really, really examine, and I would like it to be spelled out very clearly to me and to everybody in Auburn, how you change the dimensions of the watershed. Thank you.
Peter Dingley, 1017 Summer Street. You know, we paid $100,000 for this study that we had done. And right off the bat, you want to take 150 acres out of it and commercially develop it. That, to me, is going exactly opposite what we paid $100,000 to find out. And they're telling us, do not develop it. There's minimal economic value to that. and you are gonna hurt the water. You're gonna have to put in a treatment plant, which all of us will have to pay for. And it's not worth it. Not worth it at all. Thank you.
Any other public comment? None being? I'll close public comment, bring this debate back to the council. Okay, council, we have a motion on the floor, we're back. Any questions or comments about the study? And again, let me just remind, if I could, point of clarification. This ordinance that we have right in front of us only talks about the logistic removing of a parcel of land out of the watershed. Mind you, that has been used as a gravel aggregate pit and our city dump for 70 years. And the dump is there, by the way. I'm not sure if anybody remembers that. You drive by, you'll see the PVC pipes. There's a dump. I know I was there, 5 years old, working the backhoes. That's only what we're talking about. There's other aspects of the water study. There's a lot of things I think need to be clarified. I have a long list, but I just want to make sure everybody's clear. The study talked about no development in land currently owned by the Auburn Water District / Law Pack. It's approximately 1,600 acres. So that part needs to also be included in that quote. But again, this is not about septic. This is all about what we have here from staff based upon the Lake Auburn Watershed study, as well as the reality on the ground for the last 50 to 70 years. With that said, I'd like to have Mr. Cousins, I'm not sure if John's here or not, just Mr. Cousins come up, just in case there's any questions. Councilor, any questions or comments for Mr. Cousins?
Yeah, I have a number of questions. One of the comments from the public was related to studies, and the response from the mayor was that there was one 2 years ago, but the lake study was not a hydrogeological study of this site. They referred to studies which were 32 years old, 27 years old, and 15 years old. They've been excavating for the last 15 years. So the last study, which is 15 years old, is 15 years out of date as compared to current conditions. So in terms of due diligence, one would think that the city would expect that a new hydrogeological study would be necessary to make an informed decision. Secondly,
Mr. White, do you want NPC's questions that you already have pre-approved from the public? Mr. Cousins, do you want to address that? Can you address that? That way we can take this in turn.
I can just comment on the data. The data has been collected over a long period of time from multiple sources. Some of the data is older. As you said, I think the most recent data is really the topography, and what we've tried to do is understand. Originally, most watershed boundaries were estimated, drawn on maps based on the topography because we lacked groundwater data. We don't have good groundwater data throughout most of the city, but we do have good topographic data. So that's how the original USGS watershed boundaries were drawn. This particular area, we happen to have more groundwater data than most areas, and the topography has changed substantially during that period. So we can see that the surface runoff that lands inside the walls of the pit drains towards the inside of the pit. And as a surface runoff doesn't make it to Lake Auburn. And then the data that we have, we think supports that the groundwater in the areas that we've shown on the maps and we've had analyzed by the study in 2020, that was their best depiction of what they believe based on that data to be the edges of the watershed boundary.
Very good. Mr. Whiting, by courtesy, we usually go around.
Sure,
If there's somebody else want, we'll come right back to you,
Yep.
okay? Is there any other questions or comments before we go back to Mr. Whiting?
After he gets done, I would like a turn, but let him go finish his points first.
yeah, I feel strongly about the issue because I consider my biggest constituent not anyone in this room, but the lake itself. The lake itself supplies water to 39,000 people. The people in Lewiston, there are more people that use Lake Auburn water than Auburn citizens, so it's a regional concern. There was another question related to, Mr. Beal made reference to a couple of arrows related to the red circle near the ledge area where it's unclear where the water flows. There was another question related to the city staff report indicates that two small areas that would still be in the watershed should be rezoned general business. And I take exception to that. To me, if you're going to rezone and you are absolutely certain that the watershed boundary is a certain boundary, there should be no general business whatsoever that goes beyond into the watershed boundary, which is contrary to the report. So could you address that?
There is a small area along the roadway that we've suggested. This area here, I think you can see the cursor on those screens. FB Environmental and their watershed modeler, who I think is very talented, well-known for doing good work in watershed modeling, modeled this as the line based on the topography and groundwater data that she was given access to. That area is the safest location for a driveway to the west of Mount Auburn Avenue. So that area is important from a development potential perspective. And while it is not currently graded to drain inside the watershed, staff's thought was that we could either apply the phosphorus standards that apply within the watershed, but the developer has also said that by the time it's developed, that will drain to internally within the pit. So rather than come back and amend it again, we were suggesting that the watershed boundary be mapped as the topography and groundwater data supports today, but allow for some flexibility in where that entrance is if they can either A, drain it into the pit, or B, treat the phosphorus, but they plan to drain it into the pit.
I'm sorry, and just so everybody knows, the council specifically here on this, that this provides the opportunity for someone to explore what a good Lake Smart development could look like. It still has to go through staff, state, planning board approval on anything, which I think addresses the site retention ponds up to 12. It really depends upon the topography, it depends upon the type of development, how big, how small. Those variables need to be done at the staff level. But that will never happen unless opportunity actually to realize what the potential here is safely happens. Is there any other comments, Councilor Gehring?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I sort of understand what you just said.
We're not approving a project.
No,
that has a whole
but-
layer of project approvals.
Right, but we're getting the ground set for future proposed looking at the
Yes.
developments.
Yes.
To me, that's the cart before the horse.
No, that's
A
how the city
person-
runs. That's how what zoning is all about. You rezone something so potential exists, and then those development potentials, whether it's an individual's home or a 12-unit apartment building, has to go through the staff and planning board approval process.
For such a big chunk of land, I would say still the cart before the horse. A developer would take all the risk up front to figure out what he or she would like to do, and then propose their recommendations to city staff, and then it would go in front of the planning board for their review. I have concerns about when you talk about at the gravel pit, that they know right at this point in time which way the water goes. But if they fill in, eventually the plan, isn't it, to fill in the gravel pit? And when
No.
it's going to be forever a gravel
Well,
pit?
hold on, you don't know what the plan is. I will say that if you think about it conceptually, how many tens of millions of dollars of aggregate has been harvested from that pit? To put that aggregate back in would be an equal amount of tens of millions of dollars, which would make it unfinancially beneficial, just improper to even do. So, I mean, and that's the whole point. If you actually change the topography back so it's in the watershed, well, then you'll be counterproductive. We don't take questions from the audience. So, ma'am, I'm sorry, we do not take questions from the audience. Public hearings happen.
And then the other thing is, with all the mining in the gravel pit, ground would, in my state of thinking, would be that it would shift, and all the excavating, shaking of with the equipment, the earth would change the topography. So wouldn't that also change some potentially which way the water flows?
Mr. Cousins, would you like to address that?
So over time, they've changed the topography so that the surface water doesn't drain towards the lake within that area. This sort of darker shaded area along Grace Lawn, that's been recommended for this change since the adoption of the 2010 comprehensive plan. What we've done more recently is expanded that to what we believe is a more accurate boundary of the watershed based on the Lake Auburn study. The stormwater treatments, so our definition of the boundary of the Lake Auburn Watershed District that we use for zoning is that section of the city in which surfaced and subsurface waters ultimately flow or drain into Lake Auburn. We know factually that that's not what happens within this area, and that's why we've recommended that change. So the actual drainage boundaries are followed by our zoning boundary. The stormwater treatments, we've talked with the property owner about concept plans, and because this pit drains internally, and it will still do that forever if it's developed, it will remain an internally drained pit. They can't use traditional stormwater treatment methods that expel water outside the site. They're not gonna pump that stormwater up over Grace Lawn and let it run downstreams towards the Androscoggin. So what they're proposing is about a dozen stormwater treatment systems that are low-impact development stormwater treatment systems that provide treatment for the water on the site and let it infiltrate into the soil. That development of the site actually, and this was in the staff report, the current pollutant loads as a gravel pit are much higher than the eventual developed site with stormwater best management practices. The Lake Auburn report said that, recognizing that this is not within the watershed and removing that from the models, while that doesn't change the lake because the pollutants weren't going to the lake anyways, it actually removed 44 approximately pounds of nitrogen or phosphorus per year from the models that were estimating the health of our lake, because they were now recognizing that that was not going into the ground and moving into the lake underground. This is a chart that is from the Environmental Protection Agency, and it's used by Maine DEP to estimate improvements of best management practices installed for stormwater in watersheds related to grant money that DEP provides. The post-development condition of this site with the BMPs that we've discussed would reduce the total nitrogen contribution of the site by 50%, phosphorus, same thing, BOD, biological oxygen demand, 69%, sediment by 85%. So whether we know that it's not draining towards the lake, but the development of this site will provide for cleaner stormwater than the current use as a gravel pit over time.
Councilor Milks?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to just make sure it's clear as the mayor representative to the Water and Sewer Board, that I totally understand where people that are concerned with the lake are coming from, because I certainly am someone that is as well. Both my kids have been raised drinking Auburn water. I've got a number of houses and families that live on Auburn water. I'm very, very concerned that we maintain the integrity of the lake. What I believe in doing my research and the study and what's going on and what's proposed, that it makes a lot of sense. Many of my constituents have addressed to me that they think it makes sense as well, and I think it could be a win-win in that it makes, and my understanding of the way that we've been doing stormwater in the city we've improved, the river has gone from a C to a B, because Auburn has been ahead of the curve on eliminating the stormwater from the sewer. The current technologies that are available and the environmental mitigation that we can do on this development, I think can make this better. And I don't think, we're not saying that it's 100% that there's a development and we know what it's gonna be, but I really believe that based on the way that the science, that it's not in the watershed as it sits today, and that improving that area could be a win. One, it's going to improve the tax burden on the citizens of Auburn, and that's going to be important. And I think the science does justify taking a look at that and the development. So I respect everybody's opinion, but I do think it's a good idea.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask a point of information when we get done?
Yes, of course. Councilor Staples?
Yeah, looking at this map, I think what we should do here is, I think we need to take the land that is going to be inside of the watershed, and we need to keep that zoned agricultural. So I'd like to make a motion to exclude land that would remain inside of the watershed from any zone change to general business.
Hold on. I have a motion on the floor, but I just want to make sure I've got that clear, okay? I don't want to... You are making a motion to ensure that the land not included in this ordinance reading, but closer to the water.
No.
No, you're...
No,
because it's currently
Specific
agriculture
little
right now.
parcel that's left out, is that the one you're talking
yeah,
about?
the one that's circled there in the include. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that land is going to be inside of the watershed. So I want to exclude it from this zone change. So I'd like to make a motion to exclude any portion of this parcel from a zone change to general business if it's going to remain inside the watershed.
If it's going to remain inside the watershed.
You got it.
In other words, those two little yellow.
Yeah, I got you. So just to paraphrase, because I want to make sure we're all clear, this is kind of highly detailed. If that area has been proven to be outside of the watershed, then it can be rezoned, correct?
As drawn on that map right there.
Okay. I have a motion on the floor to exclude the northeast quadrant of that land. Eric, help me, right? That
Yeah.
identified land.
So southwest here.
Is that southwest? Yeah, southwest, thank you. I was looking at that screen, looks northeast, southwest. So that southwest quarter to be excluded from this zone change unless it's converted outside of the watershed. I have a motion. I have a second.
I'll second it for discussion.
Excuse me. Second?
Yes.
Okay. Open this up. This is a motion to amend, basically stating that this small section will be out of this zone change of general business unless the topography changes, that it is now out of the watershed.
Well, I didn't say that part. I said we're not going to include this in the zone change.
So that's it, period, regardless.
Well, they could, I mean, you can change zones later. If it, if you needed to change it at some point.
Okay.
It would be a separate process, but to exclude it from this process.
You want to exclude that quadrant, that portion. Is there any debate, discussion?
Discussion, when you get
Go
started.
ahead, go ahead.
The thing of it is, if we're not careful the way we're wording this, because what we're doing is changing zones, so what you're recommended, if we're not careful, is going to be a moot point.
Okay.
Councilor Wyden?
Yeah, my comment is, just from the various people I've talked to, I've gotten phone calls and had emails for, about a week on this, and my preference would be to see the lake study people come back, because there's never been a public hearing. There was a closed
I'm sorry,
work
there was
session.
It was
It was
public.
closed,
I'm sorry,
and
you
it
could
was.
point down if you could, please?
I'm
Thank you.
sorry, Mr. Mayor, but it was a work session, workshop, and the public was prohibited from speaking. Only the city council.
It was a presentation.
And the mayor could communicate with the people who cost the city $100,000 studying the lake. And I think a lot of people have questions about that, and they'd like to have answers to those questions. There's a trust issue.
Well, this is a
That's why there's.
contest. Okay. That will not be tolerated. For sure. Thank you. You can leave. You can absolutely leave now. If you want to run these meetings, please, by all means, run for mayor. Until then, respect the rules here. You can escort yourself out, or you can keep silence. Councilor Wyden?
Okay, so that would be my preference, to see them come back. I think Dana's amendment is useful, but most of the people I've talked to either oppose any rezoning, and I don't think that's realistic, because in fact, the watershed boundaries are different than what we thought they were. There's some questions, legitimate questions about what they truly are and where all the water flows are, and studies that relate to hydrogeological studies are not recent. So there are legitimate questions there. But the overwhelming response I've heard from most people is they'd be very comfortable with maintaining a large agricultural and resource protection zone on the lower end towards the lake with a strip along Grace Lawn. And that, you know, I guess would be negotiable based on what could be accomplished and, you know, protections being considered and, you know, feasibility of you know, development for people but that own the property. But that, to me, would be a better resolution than just this carte blanche. I mean, somebody asked me how many units could be built on there, and under multifamily suburban, which is the zone which general business refers to for units, under general business would be 2,516 housing units.
Well,
I don't think people want to see that many, and it probably wouldn't happen.
That
but
might solve our housing crisis.
Well,
Not advocating, but thank you very much. I just want to keep this on to this amendment. Councilor Gary?
Thank you. Well, I gotta wait, because what I wanted to ask is gonna come after this amendment, sorry.
Do we have any other questions on this amendment? None being, I'm going to ask for a vote on the motion to amend as stands by Councilor Staples. All those in favor of this amendment, please raise your hand. Opposed? Motion fails 4-3. Okay, we're back to the original, excuse me, the amendment fails 4-3, I apologize. We're back to the original motion. Questions?
Yes.
Councilor Gary?
One is I need a point of information, and the other one is, may I ask a question through the chair to Councilor Milks?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First with the question. You represent two different boards dealing with water and water protection, correct?
Just one. The sewer board doesn't deal.
No, but you, Lake Water Protection?
Just the Auburn trustees, the water district trustees.
Okay. Has your board read this, what we're trying to do, and has your committee taken a vote on this issue? And
No.
do they support it?
We have not taken a vote on that.
Have you discussed it?
The change of the watershed?
What we're trying to do tonight? In other words, did they give their input?
We haven't discussed this.
Do they need to, though? Because it's not in the watershed.
It's not in the watershed.
Okay.
And then the point of information is, according to what the good Council Whiting has said, when our consultants came with their study and they gave a presentation, they just used slides and stuff. They were supposed to give us the final report when they came back. And I don't remember a full-fledged when they came back, because we sent them back with a bunch of questions to be answered.
I can answer that, Mayor. So the presentation that was done was designed so that the council would have an opportunity and for the public to hear that presentation and give any direction back to the FB Environmental to make any, basically what they were doing is they were working up models. So
Right.
it gave the council an opportunity to say, include this model, adjust this model, and put that back into the final report. Their goal was not to come back with another final presentation. However, if the council votes to allocate those funds, we could hire them to come back to give a final presentation on that report. But the final report is on the city's website.
Thank
With
you.
with the adjusted models, I'm sorry.
I'd like to just elaborate as well. We have discussed this study, and we've discussed the changes of the boundaries, and there wasn't any objection from the changing of the boundaries in this area from staff
Can I just
in
get
the water department.
a point of clarification too? We talk about, we say the word study, but this study, it included a lot of other data analytical models and modeling. So I think it's really what your definition of, if someone says we want a study done, what has been done? The modeling, is what is the most current and acceptable form of looking at watershed runoffs and so forth? Because that was included in the study, the FB study. In other words, I want to make sure we're not splitting hairs here and everybody's on the same sheet of music. What is a study? How are studies proposed? How are they executed? What are the data sources? Are those data sources that anybody else, if we commission a study, would actually be using or modeling?
There was a lot of data from previous reports that were done by either the Auburn Water District, the Lake Auburn Watershed Protection Commission, a lot of water quality data collected by Bates College and Holly Ewing, and a lot of data from our GIS, the topography. Groundwater movements were from a combination of sources from the city testing around the dump, the landfill, and the DEP required water monitoring wells that were in the pits themselves. So there was a lot of different sources, but this study aimed to take a look at all of that information from other studies and consolidate it.
Is there another study, excuse me, I don't want to use that term. Is there another data point or reference or scientific analysis that could be done to either repute, support this recommendation from FFB? Is there anything that has been missed?
I think it was a pretty holistic report that took into account a lot of different studies that have existed over the years and data from a lot of different sources, whatever was available from the Water District, Lake Auburn Watershed Protection Commission, and the City of Auburn was provided to them.
Has the City of Auburn seen any data, any scientific research stating that this recommendation would do more harm to the lake?
No, I think it's a recognition that the water is not draining to the lake and that there can be some other use of the land. I think it's good that you're cautious. I think the watershed and the quality of Lake Auburn is one of our most critical natural resources, but this was a way to allow for some development in that general area that should not have a negative impact on the lake, based on the study.
Is there any other questions before I call a vote? None being, I'd like to call a vote at this time. Roll call vote, please.
Point of information, Mr. Mayor.
Roll call vote, please. Vote has been called.
You said you were going to permit a public discussion.
Public hearing has been open and closed, sir. Thank you very much. Roll call vote.
Councilor Staples?
No.
Councilor Gary?
No.
Councilor Whiting?
No.
Councilor Hawes?
Yes.
Councilor Milks?
Yes.
Councilor Moran?
Yes.
Councilor Walker?
Yes.
First reading passes 4-3. Next is ordinance 09-03072022, approving the amendment to the zoning map, Washington Street, Minot Avenue area from the general business and industrial to form-based code downtown. Traditional center T-5.1. This is a public hearing and first reading. Do I have a motion?
Motion to accept.
Second.
Motion, Councilor Walker, second from Councilor Whiting. I'm going to open this up to the public. Is there anybody here in the public that would like to speak on this order?
As a member of the public, I feel like you give us the minimum amount of information you possibly can. What is this? What is this ordinance that you're talking about right now?
Just fair question.
Thank you.
So, historically, well predating me as mayor,
What's that?
well predating my time as mayor, okay, all city council agendas, actually by ordinance, are published at minimum 2 business days prior to the meeting.
Oh, so I can be informed.
We have them up
myself.
usually Thursday at close of business, and all the detail that the council has.
Just a little bit? Could you just share a little bit of
I
information?
absolutely can.
That would be
So
great.
this basically takes Washington Street Gateway and turns it from a general business and industrial zoning, and we'll bring up the map here in a second, to a form-based code. And that was a quick example of form-based code. So basically, we're just rezoning this area of Washington Street, primarily southbound, touching northbound, into that into a form-based code. Yeah? Eric's here. Open this up to the public. Is there anybody else from the public that would like to speak on this? No? Okay. We're going to bring it back to council. Council? Comments, questions? We've got Mr. Cousins here too. Anything? Any comments? Any questions? Councilor Staples?
Yeah, so as part of this is posed as a change from the comprehensive plan recommendations. As part of the comprehensive plan recommendations, we did not include parcel ID 199-052. That was coming from a different zone that was not recommended to be part of this change. Could we just get a little bit of Eric, could you talk just a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. That was I'm going to zoom back out a little bit so that's clear. So that parcel is a little over 9 acres, right close to 10 acres here on Washington Street southbound. It's mostly separated from Washington Street southbound by a railroad line, and just to the south of that is safe handling. That parcel's been in the industrial zone. It's been considered for industrial developments for the period of time when it's been available. It abuts the general business zoning district here. So the homes that abut it on the north side are in the general business zone. And then you have the urban residential zone here. But there's a large block of industrial land here. The lot is not well suited for industrial development. There's been interest in having that included in the general business zone by the property owner, and mostly to open up the possibility of housing as part of the development. The general business zone is a mixed-use development because of the timing of considering the form-based code and changing that general business area to form-based code. We talked to the council upon initiation and included that in what would be the form-based code area. I do think that the mixed use, either general business or the form-based code, is probably a better transition or a better buffer between the residential uses in that general business zone and urban residential zone here and suburban residential zone here. It's a better buffer than the industrial zone. I mean, that could be an extension of safe handling, a fuel depot, a rail yard. I think, you know, housing in that area is probably a better buffer than what those industrial uses could be. But it still is changed, so I understand that people are concerned with that.
Thank you.
I have a comment. I think there was some emails about that, and I think it's Ward 4, but your explanation, Eric, I think is a good one, and I think you're absolutely right, because if you're looking to go with this rezoning, it's actually better for those neighbors who could be subjected to safe handling, expanding, or that sort of industrial use, which would be more problematic than what could happen otherwise. And my recollection of that land is that it might be fairly hard to develop. It seems like it's kind of low and swampy and near Taylor Brook, so it's probably going to be a buffer anyways, but I agree with your reasoning.
I'm sorry, Councilor Moore?
I'd like to concur with Councilor Whiting. I drove by the location several times. I have constituents that are concerned about the future use of that land. Same assessment I had by looking at it in person, viewing it on the GIS map. Looks real problematic. Obviously, Taylor Brook there, I believe it's Taylor Brook there, you know, provides obviously some limitations from an environmental standpoint. The rail cuts right through there. It's a little bit of a wonky location as far as access to the land. And my constituents that brought up concern genuinely have concerns about large-scale development and that development exposing what is a very traditional kind of neighborhood in Auburn to Washington Avenue. Mr. Cousins, can you speak to hypotheticals? And it's probably not fair, but we rezone that, and there is some kind of development. Can you speak about the precautions that your planning office would have in place to protect the concerns of abutting properties?
So it would go beyond just the planning office. We would work with the developers to try to structure a set of plans that meets the ordinance. But a parcel that large in a mixed-use zone is almost certainly going to have at least one building over 5,000 or 10,000 square feet when it's developed, or 3 or more dwelling units. I think it's more likely to have 3 or more dwelling units than commercial uses. But that would trigger a subdivision and site plan review at the planning board.
Sure.
So at that point, we would work with a developer to try to have a set of plans that we believe can meet the standards before they get to planning board, but the planning board would also have a public hearing notify all property owners within 500 feet, and there would be an opportunity to comment specifically on that project. And there are limitations with that site between floodplain, shoreline zoning, setbacks from the stream, the rail line. I think it's not all developable land.
Well, that was my assumption, and I think that's an important point. And I think everybody should take notice of whenever there's developments, there's many thresholds that this process that people need to go through. And I know while on the planning board, buffers were always a very important point, and things were not approved positively on the planning board because of poor buffering for residential adjacent properties. So I asked the question, frankly, as feeling like I already knew the answer, but I felt it was important for the public to hear, and certainly the people at home that are specifically concerned about their quality of life and that parcel of land can understand that there are mechanisms in place to protect their best interests. Thank you.
Councilor Garb?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I've been told it's got a lot of trees and nature stuff, and like you said, it's kind of wonky. It's got water. But stranger things have happened. If they declare that it's a wetland, I've known for other developments, they've moved a wetland before to another part of the city.
I don't think you can move the whole brook. But, Mr. Cousins?
No, they will have setbacks that they can't alter from the brook, but they certainly could fill wetlands, and they could pay a mitigation fee for some of the wetlands on the site. It's a lot harder to do that if they're directly connected to the brook, but those that are disconnected, I would expect that there would be some impacts to those.
Now, how much property are we talking about? I can see the blue line, but does it hook on to the purple property? I mean, the light purple one?
The only access to that site would be off of Brickyard Circle. So Washington Street is a controlled access highway. The only access would be off that existing side street of Brickyard Circle.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I'm going to ask for a vote on this. I'd like to call a vote. Jill?
Counselor Staples?
Yes.
Counselor Gary?
Yes.
Counselor Whiting?
Yes.
Counselor Hawes?
Yes.
Counselor Milks?
Yes?
Counselor Moran?
Yes.
Counselor Walker?
Yes.
Passes 7-0. Next is ordinance 10-03072022, amending Chapter 60, Article 12, Division 2, Section 60-1070. Excuse me, this is a public hearing and first reading. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion from Councilor Staples. Motion from Councilor Staples, second from Councilor Hawes. Open this up to the public for comment. Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak to this? And just for clarification, this has to do with implementing low-impact design standards within the Taylor Pond and Lake Auburn watershed. None being, I'll bring it back to the council. Council, all the information's in the packet. Is there any questions or comments? I will state that, I'm pretty happy with something like this, because what this does is a proactive way to protect the watershed from phosphorus runoff. This is something that also could be and should have been for generations implemented and enforced in the outlying watershed towns, Minot, Hebron, Turner, who have been producing basically 50% of all the phosphorus load within Lake Auburn. So this is a proactive step, and it's also a recommendation that's come forth from staff. Is there any questions on this? None being? I'm going to ask for a roll call vote.
Counselor Staples?
Yes.
Counselor Gary?
Yes.
Counselor Whiting?
Yes.
Counselor Hawes?
Yes.
Counselor Milks?
Yes.
Counselor Moran?
Yes.
Counselor Walker?
Not present. Passes 6-0-0. Next, order 37-0307-2022. This is allocating $500,000 of American Recovery Protection Act funds to relocate and expand the Business and Community Development Department at 95 Main Street. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry.
I believe you missed Order 36.
Hey, man, how did I miss that? Yeah, that's possible. You're right. Thanks. Good point of order. After a while, it runs in. Next, excuse me, I stand correct, is Order 36-0307-2022, directing staff to draft residential zone amendments consistent with a comprehensive plan, and to direct the planning board to review, hold public hearings on the proposed zone changes, and forward recommendations to the council. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion, Councilor Staples, second, Councilor Walker. Open this up to the public for comment. Anybody in the public that would like to comment about this? Basically, this allows, there's 3 mechanisms to start or implement a zoning change review. 1 is at the planning board, 2 is at the citizen level or resident level through petition, and 3rd is through council order. This is council order. Bring it back to the council. Anybody from the council like to speak on this? None being? Okay. I'd like to call for a vote. Show of hands, all those in favor. Opposed? None being, passes 7-0. Next, Order 37-03072022, allocating $500,000 of ARPA funds to relocate and expand the Business and Community Development Department to 95 Main Street. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion, Councilor Milk, second from Councilor, was it Hawes? No?
Whiting.
Whiting.
You mix us up a little.
I'm telling you, it's like a younger, older version voice or something. It's easy to do. I can't. I'm gonna have to move you two.
My younger brother.
I'm gonna open this up to the public for comment. Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment on this? None? Yep, please. If you'd like to, just please step to the podium. Say your name and address and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
My name's Maureen O'Brien. I'm at 42 Winter Street in Auburn. I really have a problem with the way that these orders are presented. They really don't help the public to understand what's going on. I don't understand what this expansion, is this for a new building? What is the money, what is it that you're asking for?
Normally, again, everything's posted 2 business days prior to the meeting, ma'am. And we open this up to public comment. We bring it back to the council. We do give a descriptor of this. If you're asking for more detail, I'll be happy to give it to you on this. This is this is actually allowing, I'm going to turn it over to the manager because it's his staff, it's his responsibility. So I'll turn it over to the manager to explain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me just pull this up.
So one thing I'd add, I think what you're asking is, this is not much detail on this order. But within the package, each one of these orders has a very large.
The public doesn't get your package.
But it's on the website.
I understand that, but
So
when
I
we
just wanna
come to
make sure
these
that you knew that
meetings, we should be allowed to ask what's going on.
Absolutely. They're also,
I'm
just so you know.
trying to give you information. that's
They're
all.
posted online, but they're also printed and available at the clerk's office as well. So you can request a paper copy, anyone can. I do believe we keep them at the library as well, too. So they are there for common use and takeaways. And they are roughly, I think this one's like 180 pages, maybe I could be off. They're very thick, but they are itemized and they're easy to go through. Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you recall, you applied through your authorization for a lead grant. That lead grant that was applied for was awarded. And then we've also been awarded the Healthy Home Grant. Within those funds have created additional staffing that is being paid for through the grant. I'll ask Glenn to come up just to give you a better overview of just the amount of positions that shifted. Those positions are paid for under those grants, but what it has created is space needs here within Auburn Hall. And so that's limited our access for really good public access to this department as well because of their limited space. But Glenn, do you want to cover anything else in that?
Sure. So with the lead grant, we had to add 2 additional staff. Along with that, we have the home funds, the ARP home funds that expanded $750,000 to provide services to homeless and to gather information and work with that population. So that's 2 additional staff that we're adding. So therefore, that along with the space we need for people to come in and actually meet with people to come in and do the applications and have that space so that everybody can be comfortable. We just don't have enough space in Auburn Hall to now take on all that new staff. I will say that in the 2023 budget, the actual overall salaries for my staff went down, even though we've added all these additional staff. They're all being paid for by the federal dollars to do this work, and most of them will last at least 3 to 4 years of that funding. So it's really a benefit to the community to be able to do this. As part of my department is also the general assistance and public health, so that will all move into this new space and provide all of those community services directly from one location and much easier access.
So, ma'am, that was a pretty detailed explanation of the topic. Do you have any questions on this at this time?
So this is going to be
Or statements, I'm sorry.
new space that the city of Auburn is going to be purchasing?
Leasing.
Leasing for 5 years.
Leasing
And if you, yes, I
to
just want
provide
to,
services for homeless people?
and this comes out during the debate and discussion, I'm sorry, but it's just against what the established order of business is to have a consistent question and answer going back with the public. But for this, I allowed it, okay, because it's the first time, it's a little anomaly. Do you have a statement on this or an opinion?
I'm just trying to get an understanding of what this money is being allotted for.
So as a council now, we will actually talk about that and process, and this is, I don't change, this is how it has been since, I don't know, we had a city council in 1869. So,
I just think the public needs to have a chance to participate.
and you do through your elected representatives, absolutely, and through public
My
hearing.
elected representative only has doesn't even have a voicemail to leave a way to.
Thank you, ma'am. So we'll bring it back to the council at this time. Council, is there any discussion, questions, debate? Councilor Gary? And you have one, Councilor?
I'll
Well,
wait my
please,
turn.
Please, Councilor Gary.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, you were saying that this money is also going for a lease for up to 5 years?
Yes, 5-year lease.
Now, once the funding goes away, unless we reapprove more funding, and the police department relocates, because its time frame is almost similar to the new public safety, will you come back here, or is it going to be an ongoing thing in this new office?
I don't want to speak for the manager's office, but I believe that if the space available in this building, this is where we'll be, because this is where the least expensive space is. And this is not trying to spend more. It's a matter of we just need the space to provide the services.
Thank you.
Councilor Staples, come to you, Councilor Moran, afterwards.
Yeah, sure. So I see the need for this. I would just, I have a different angle for this one. I feel as though you're likely to need to come back to this building every so often for a meeting or something. I think it would be interesting if this this department were to move to Great Falls Plaza. The reason I say that is because that pedestrian crossing around Court Street
Would definitely get built then, wouldn't it?
would be built.
Well, that's a clever.
And I think I mean, it's, I laugh too, but I think it's serious. I think that would be a mechanism to have the city take a real look at Court Streets and its pedestrian walkability.
If you look at page 114 for the council, this talks about the different properties staff looked at, along with corresponding prices. I will say, from a transparency standpoint, phenomenal job getting multiple quotes and really detailed financial analysis on all the different parcels. Outstanding. I don't think I've seen this level of detail in quite a long time from municipalities. So, interesting comment, Councilor Staples. Any other comments, discussion? I think you're next, Councilor Moore.
Yeah, and I think what Councilor Gary said was very germane. I looked at the timing of everything as well, and it was like, man, like there's going to be some space available. It's just poor timing right now. So I agree. I think there's none of us have a crystal ball, but there may be a nice opportunity there. My default position is I'm like, it's more liability for the city eventually at some point in the future. I know ARPA funds are handling that for now. But at a macro level, I think we have fabulous staff here at the city. So to some degree, I trust their judgment in being good stewards of these programs and these dollars and making the right choices. So that's what I have to say.
Any other comments? None being? I'll ask for a vote. I was giving you a chance for an amendment. Long and hard.
Well, the The order doesn't say how they're gonna spend it, it just says that they wanna use the money for something.
In the packet, there's a detailed breakdown of.
I know.
Okay, I'm gonna say that.
It's still hopeful thinking, but I tell you what, that Court Street pedestrian safety plan is in the works. I know that needs to happen, but I agree with you. Okay, let's ask for a vote. Show of hands, all those in favor? Opposed? None being, passes 7-0.
Thank you, and I'll come in under budget.
Next is Order 38-03072022, allocating $500,000 of ARPA funds to create an economic development revolving loan pool. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. A motion from Councilor Staples, second from Councilor Milks. On this, open up to the public for comment. Again, this is concerning opening up a loan pool for small businesses as defined with, or as having less than 100 people and or $5 million in gross or net or gross revenue annually. We got Jay Bruncheck, Economic Development, joining Glenn on this for any further questions. Is there anybody from the public, excuse me, who would like to speak on this? None being, okay, I'll bring it back to council. Council, this is something we've been talking about on and off now for a better portion of a year. I'm going to go with Councilor Hawes first and foremost and come back to Councilor Staples.
No, as I'm reading it, I mean, it all makes sense. It looks good to me. I've had a chance to review it, so I think creating jobs and building small businesses is very crucial in our time, in our city, and I'd like to see it happen.
Okay, we got in supportive. Councilor Staples, I believe you had a comment?
Yeah, I just want to say that this is precisely what I want to see these monies used for. I want to see more programs like this, setting up revolving loan pools, this type of thing. I think, you know, we could really get a lot out of this, and I appreciate you guys bringing this forward. Thank you.
Quick question. I know in the past, CDBG has had trouble with these kinds of loans, but I suspect maybe it's because of the HUD regulations, and then maybe with ARPA, it will have less regulation and red tape tied to it so that it will be easier to make these kind of loans?
ARPA funds are controlled by the U.S. Treasury, which is a whole different animal and understands financing, and it will allow us to put together a loan pool that is very similar to a standard business loan pool. Some of the reporting is different, but other than that, the key is going to be to make sure we have all the money out at all the right time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other comment, question? No? Oh, I do have one. Since ARPA money has to be allocated, or excuse me, yeah, encumbered by 2024, allocated by 2026, what happens to the proceeds on loan repayment, though?
Again, it's going to be really key as to we have all the money out at just the right time. Is as long as it's all out.
As long as it's out and encumbered? Okay, gotcha.
Obligated?
Obligated.
Out. 'Cause we have to have it out the door.
And then a new day dawns as soon as that May deadline of 2026 passes.
There'll be a small amount that has to go back.
So this hopefully will ideally be a permanent loan pool that
We're
can be
hoping-
consistently tapped into. Okay,
That's my
very
goal.
good. Self-sustaining. If there's no other questions or arguments against, there hasn't been any, but I'm just throwing that out there. I'd like to ask for a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? None being? Passes 7-0.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, just for an
Please.
update for the council regarding ARPA. So based on what you've just voted on this evening, of the $13,545,799, you have now allocated $4,890,000, which is 36% of the total amount that's available to the city.
That's a strong run, right? Anybody ever see Brewster's Millions? We're not there. We're not doing that.
I love that movie.
That was a great movie. So next is Order 39-03072022, authorizing the reallocation of ARPA funds to expand the Sustainability Auburn program. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion, Councilor Gary, second from Councilor Walker. I'll open this up to the public for comment. And while we're waiting for anyone to come up, we did allocate $250,000 for matching efficiency Maine grants to Auburn residents and homeowners. This does is it takes $50,000 of that $250,000 and makes it available for Maine residents who own property in Auburn to fix Auburn properties. So it's kind of closing a loophole. Correct, Glenn, on that?
Yes.
Yeah.
And efficiency Maine only allows reimbursement for up to 4-unit rental, so this would not be for large rental units, basically things what's considered residential. So single family up to 4 units.
Okay. And right now, I believe we've already expended around $50,000 in those matching grants.
Correct.
Great. We'll bring it back to the council. Council, any debate? None being. All those in favor? Opposed? None being. Passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Next, last open session of the night. Members of the public are invited to speak to the council about any issue directly related to city business which is not on tonight's agenda. Ask members to come up to the podium, state your name and address, and limit your comments to around 3 minutes. I will now close the second and last public open session. Now on to reports. Mayor's reports. Couple things. Okay, so school budget. I just want to give you a brief overview of what's coming down the line. We have the presentation, first part of the budget. We will be meeting for the next 7 consecutive Wednesdays, the school department, in order to go over the budget. Right now, as proposed, right out of the gate, top line, 58 cents increase to the mill rate. That does not take into account any debate, motions to amend at the school committee. Obviously, it hasn't run through the city council yet. It also does not take into account any additional increases in our valuation through new construction over the past year, which could offset that. So we're right in the beginning. We will continue to look for efficiencies, economies of scale. I don't want to commit on what it might look like, but I will look lower than this, okay? Second, we do have, as you remember, a new Sustainability and Natural Resources Board. Part of that board is an appointment by the mayor, either of himself or herself, or a councilor as their representative upon, confirmation by the council. I'd like to announce that I'll be nominating Councilor Walker to represent myself on the Sustainability and Natural Resources Board. So thank you, Councilor Walker, for agreeing, and I'm pretty sure I did ask you. Might not have, but it's okay. So that's it for reports. Oh, legislation, real quick. There's 2 bills that we're watching right now. It's LD 1884, which ends the income requirement and minimum lot sizes in all zones, period. And there's also LD 2003, which was introduced by Speaker of the House Brian Fecteau and Senator Hickman, as well as Representative Arata from New Gloucester. It's bipartisan. I participated in some press conferences, and I continue to talk to the media about this. We are at the table right now supporting this. I am supporting this. Though I will say, by being at the table to support this, there are many things in there that I've already talked with staff with and talked with my peers in municipal government around the state that need to be modified. And I've gotten commitments from Speaker Fecteau, as well as members of the Labor and Housing Committee, that modifications will be accepted during their workshop phase. That public hearing was today. Okay? So it's very, very busy on the special session. There's other pieces of legislation that are winding their ways through, where Phil and I and Brian are working with Maine Municipal Association on many of these initiatives. But they're happening very, very quickly and with very limited heads up. So as they come forth and they're important, we'll try to get out with the council, give you at least an update, ask for feedback, phone call, email, et cetera, because we want to make sure that you're all part of this process as much as we can. So that's it, my report. And
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, could I get that LD, the second one again?
Sponsored by Speaker Fecteau?
Yes.
LD 2003.
Thank you.
It just goes printed on Monday. Public hearing was today. Okay, we're going to start over here. Councilor Gary, any reports?
None at this time. Thank you.
We'll just keep working around, Councilor Whiting. Mr. Walker?
No.
LATC meets this week on Zoom on Thursday at 5:30.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. I only have a few items, 2 items actually. One regarding the city-school partnership as it pertains to transportation facilities and fields, as well as capital infrastructure. That collaboration is still well underway. As of last Monday, our staff did take administrative control over those functions. They've been working with the school on a regular basis, meeting with the collective bargaining units from both city and school as it impacts that work. Very good results so far moving forward. I think the staff is aligning well, and it certainly is a a benefit for school administration to be able to rely on a team that handles, if you take a look at our Public Works Department and the amount of infrastructure that we already manage and take a look at the responsibilities they have, this is something that just is second nature for them and what they do. So I believe that this partnership will have great benefits. We'll continue providing updates to the council and to the public as we move forward. We initially came into this with a 6-month review of this. That'll come back to ensure that we're meeting all those benchmarks and goals that we've outlined, and for council to consider moving forward with that in the future. Also, budget review is well underway. What you will see first is the capital improvement plan. That's the 5-year plan that you will receive. Typically, that is a joint CIP presentation with the school. The school does not have this year any CIP requests that are coming forward. However, the school will be here that same evening presenting their school budget. So you'll receive the school budget, and then we will move into the CIP plan. What you will see in the future, because we are moving forward with this partnership, as long as this continues, what you'll see in the future is one 5-year CIP plan, which will include all of the school infrastructure, all of the school resources will all be worked into one plan. We'll also be including that into the asset management component that we're working through. As you recall, you funded position and software as it pertains to asset management. We are also working with the school so that you'll have one source of all assets within the city, which will also include the school assets. So that is well underway. We're looking forward to presenting to you on that. Staff has been doing a great job preparing that plan and getting it ready for you for review. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question of the city manager?
Yes.
On the transportation of the buses, have they come back online yet? And if they have, cool. And if they haven't, how long before they'll be back online?
So the buses are online, not to say that some buses have not, may not have been fully cleared to be back on, but the buses that are operating, they are operating. The city, the school is still experiencing driver shortages. So when a driver calls out sick, many times you might be getting calls from constituents. I know Councilor Walker had asked regarding one of the bus routes. There's times when one bus driver actually has multiple routes. So when that one bus driver calls out, there might be multiple routes that are impacted. And so notification goes out. Those are things that the city staff is working on with the school staff to try to ensure that we have a good plan in place and we have other drivers to come in and be able to manage that. Don't quote me on how many vacancies with school bus drivers, but it's in the double digits. That's how much there is an impact when just one driver goes out, and that one driver might be, like I said, running 2 or 3 bus routes.
Councilor Walker?
Yeah, I got a couple of questions for you. One is, will you explain to the public what happened with this last snowstorm? I had many questions from all over the city of what happened, and you know what I mean. So
Yeah, sure.
Didn't even know we're having one.
Yeah, the mayor just made the statement of the century here. We didn't know we were having one. I think that I think this even surprised our meteorologists, obviously. This was supposed to be up to about an inch dusting. As you all know, we got hit with probably about 6, maybe 7 inches in some areas. And so just the timing of it is really what impacted us, as well as I did speak with the Public Works Director that morning. What ended up taking place was because of the timing, school did get delayed 2 hours because of that storm. However, we also had 6 Public Works plow trucks that broke down that morning as they were rolling out. So those were back online by late morning, all independent. There was nothing, there was no sabotage or anything that took place. It was just, those all just took place and had an impact. Fortunately with this storm is that, as all of you know who got to go out and shovel this storm, it was a really light snow, so we did not have any vehicle access, but you might have seen the secondary roads had a bit of a delay. Most of our secondary roads, probably we didn't get started clearing secondary roads until about 2 in the afternoon, I believe it was, once those trucks got back online. We have 22 plow routes, so 6 of them being hit like that in those trucks. As Councilor Walker mentioned, those trucks were in the new Auburn area, so South Auburn and those areas were the routes that were mostly impacted.
That was planned.
Yeah. So there's the update. So.
Okay, second question. Now that we're doing this with the school department, if there's a delay or no school being called, how do we contact somebody if we want to know that question?
The notification that the school currently has will continue the same way. Same way. Things that we are looking to improve, and this is within, I think the superintendent had already been working on this, and now we're just looking at moving this further, is regarding, we're one of, I think only, we might be, I don't know how many municipalities don't use route software to ensure that you have, basically you're putting your bus routes in their most efficient locations for collecting students onto the bus. We have never had that. That is underway. The school department is moving forward with that software. That's going to bring a lot more efficiencies. But what it also brings is some more enhancement when it comes to where's my bus and what's that information regarding that bus and what's that route, where you'll be able to, look at it and be able to know what's taking place with that bus. So those things are underway.
Yeah, we're getting briefed on that at the school committee as well, to the point where these are mobile app enabled. You can log in and see where your bus is, where your kid is. Okay, it's
really cool software.
You probably developed it.
Yeah.
No, don't answer that question. But yeah, really great software. That we do have a bus driver training regimen, recruitment bonus, a lot of stuff going on that's already been implemented, and that is going to help fix this issue. So we're going to move on to the Finance Director report, January 2022. Excuse me, not yet. Is there anything you'd like to say about this, Jill, the finance report?
We're right where we belong, and I finished the February report today, but you don't have it yet, so you'll have it next meeting. So, and it looks, we're ahead from, in February of where we were last year.
Ahead
as
in
far
revenue?
as revenues.
Okay.
So, I think we're doing great right now.
Is there any specific questions of the finance report for Jill at this time? No? I'll entertain a motion to accept and place on file the January 2022 final monthly finance report. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, Councilor Gary, second from Councilor Moore. Now for a vote of show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? None being, it's accepted by a vote of 7-0. Next, we have an executive session. Actually, we're going to have 2 executive sessions come up with the schedule. We do not have any business outside of those 2 executive sessions, so we will adjourn after those executive sessions are done. First one, executive session on economic development matter pursuant to 1 MRSA, Section 405. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second from Councilor Moore. All those in favor? Okay. Opposed? None being, vote 6-0.
Auburn.